All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Monday, April 24th school board meeting. If you have an agenda in front of you or you're following online, item number 1 deals with our 5 strategies. Item number 2 is our link where we can be found on YouTube. And item number 3 is our call to order. So, Ms. Steves, will you please determine if we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do.
All right, thank you. With that, I'd ask everybody to stand if you're able to and recite the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Bellingham, thank you for leading us in the pledge.
You're welcome.
Okay, this brings us to item number 4, approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Boudreau. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item number 5, recognition, awards, and presentations. Item 5A, Ms. Abby Bryan, All-State Orchestra. Come on up, please, if you would.
Hello. Faribault senior Abby Bryan played violin with the 2022-2023 Minnesota All-State Orchestra at Orchestra Hall on Saturday, February 18th. Faribault Orchestra Director Michael Salone said that the All-State Orchestra is like the Super Bowl for high school musicians. Students in high school bands, choirs, and orchestras auditioned for an All-State spot in March. Judges listened to the students, evaluating them on the overall musicianship and technique. In mid-April, they consider their scores and choose the final rosters. About 80 students are selected for the all-state orchestra groups out of the whole state. Students attended camp in August last year in St. Joseph at the College of St. Benedict, where they met their guest conductor and attended long hours of rehearsals and sectionals. They had a concert in August, which is the result of great dedication and commitment by some of the most talented young musicians in Minnesota. As part of the MMEA Midwinter Clinic, they met again February 18th at the Great Orchestra Hall to perform some incredible music by Dmitri Shostakovich and William Grant Still. As if this entire process wasn't enough of a commitment, in her spare time she played Lori in the Faribault High School Spring Musical, Oklahoma. Not only is she a very talented violinist, she has a very beautiful singing voice. Congratulations, Abby, on all your accomplishments, and you've made our Falcon family proud.
Sorry, hang on a second. You can't go anywhere quite yet. Abby, if there's anything you'd like to state about the whole experience or anything like that, and if you're willing to let a few board members ask a couple questions if they have any, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to add about your experience in the All-State and all that stuff, how it went, or your thoughts on it, anything?
So this was my second year in All-State. I thought it'd be very similar to last year. I stood corrected. There was a lot of new people. We had a new conductor, unlike last year, so it was learning his conducting style. We learned new music within the course of just 1 week. Yeah, it was a very moving experience. You connect with people in a very different way when you perform music with them, especially when it comes to something complicated like an orchestral piece. So I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to be a part of it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Board members, any questions or comments for?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Abby, do you intend on pursuing a music career in college or?
I haven't decided if I want to major or minor, but currently my plan is to participate in orchestra in college if it's an opportunity, and to also participate in the theater department at whichever college I go to.
Well, good luck to you.
Any other?
Mr. Chairman and Abby, congratulations. And I have a question. What did you enjoy more, being in Oklahoma or being at the orchestra?
Oh gosh. I really love theater, and with orchestra, when you're playing an instrument, you can't really turn to the person next to you and make a joke or something in the middle of playing. but at rehearsals, you really do get a really deep connection with the other actors and actresses. I mean, all of my closest friends are in theater. Both of them are equally great opportunities, but I think as far as community goes, I've been in the theater troupe for 4 years, so it was amazing being in Oklahoma. I had a great time with both. But
It was a wonderful performance. I love Oklahoma, and I thought your group did a wonderful job, all of you. And I know, were you in it too?
Oh, no, I can't sing.
Someone else. Believe me. Not everybody had to sing. Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Moore?
Yes, to Mr. Chair. Yes, congratulations, and I think that's quite an accomplishment, and you should be very proud of yourself. And best to you in your endeavors in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Bryan, question for you. What are your plans for the foreseeable future here?
I think I've decided that I'm going to go to UW-Madison for college. I'm really excited about that. I got into their College of Letters and Sciences, so I will be pursuing something in either STEM or in the liberal arts. Currently, I'm looking at biochemistry. It's not a for sure, but it's what I'm most interested in now. I possibly, like I mentioned before, I might double major in music as well. But I'm still a little on the fence about that one.
Gotcha.
But I'm really excited.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, and as a few had said, best wishes, and thank you for making Faribault Falcons and Faribault Public Schools proud. There's, you set the bar really high. There's a lot of people, I can assure you, that look up to you, both in theater and in violin and probably many other things. But thank you and congratulations.
Mr. Chair, I have one more comment. What you could do is go into medicine with music, and you could sing your patients well.
That's an idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, that was 5A. That brings us to 5B, Faribault High School yearbook presentation.
Try to speak loud so the mic can pick us up. But-
Perfect. Can you make sure you have everybody introduce themselves, please?
Yes.
Okay.
So thank you for having us today. My name is Sophia.
My name is Celeste.
My name's Amy.
My name is Ariana. My name is Lauren. And my name is Alexandra.
And we are just a few members of the yearbook staff here at the high school. A few of our members couldn't be here today due to conflicts, but we're really excited to be here and to share our successes with you. So, with that going, yearbook is a class. It takes place during 5th hour during our school days, every single school day. And together we've created a fully published book.
Throughout, we're going to be talking about what we learned during making the yearbook, how we created it, and what we got beyond just creating the yearbook, having more understanding about it. So what we learned during making the yearbook is making interview questions, questioning students around the halls and its teachers and the staff, and taking pictures in like our professional level type stuff. Communicating with staff and the students. Why we created the yearbook is just a piece of like time, just in pictures and like words, just trying to go back and reflect on like the past things and events. And I just feel that going beyond like making the yearbook, I just feel like we can have like a piece of their feelings, their moment, and say that someone did a touchdown. We could just have what they were going through, how they were feeling, like after like everything.
We learned many things in this class, some of which translate to the real world also. Specifically, we learned about the importance of deadlines and how if one person doesn't meet them, it affects the whole group.
In this class in general, we learned many skills such as journalism, professionalism, the importance of working efficiently, and teamwork. We really bonded as a class, and we opened up more, got out of our comfort zone, and had so much fun making the yearbook.
Okay.
Okay, so for this year's theme, we chose In Our Element, as you can see on all of our shirts. This theme was really like no other because it relates to chemistry, and we used many of the elements from the periodic table as an artistic representation of our theme.
Our mission creating the yearbook was to incorporate the theme in every page. We wanted a colorful and positive book to truly see the elements in our students. As you flip through the pages, you will see the representation of our school.
Next up, these are just a few of our favorite photos. We loved having the opportunity to go around to different events, such as sporting events, music, concerts, and just pet fests and classrooms, and we really got to experience so many different cool things that our school is doing, and we got to capture those moments through photos. These are just a few of our favorites. We have probably hundreds that we could fill pages with, but we narrowed them down for you.
Here are some more of our favorites. One of them is our yearbook team working at the Education Center. The other is a homecoming picture, and the other one, the bottom one, was our girls' dance team.
So these are some of the pages that we thought represented our best work. They all have good photos, good design, good colors, good headlines, and those are really the elements that make a good yearbook page. So we have the fall divider to separate the summer and fall sections. We have the fall play. We have a pet page. We like to do fun pages every year to show what the students and staff do outside of class. And then we have the boys swim and dive page.
And some of real world skills that we had to use was taking interviews, going to events, communicating with our peers and staff, and deciding ideas for pages, staying organized, and deadlines to our spreads. And I also wanted to add something on socializing. It's also like we had to socialize with staff, we had to socialize with teachers, and sometimes we had to actually like socialize with us too, you know, just to like, since Sophia, I think you're in dance too, you know, like it also helped like bring us all together and like to do one book. You know, our mission was to do one book, and we did it.
Creating the yearbook not only created a positive impact on all of our lives, but on the lives of the whole student body. We got to capture students, as we like to say, in their element, doing what they love most throughout their time in high school, and we got to take that and freeze it forever so they can look back on their memories however many years from now, which is really nice to be able to do for other people, just as they've done for me. This was my first year in yearbook, and I'm a senior, so it was nice. And, you know, lots of us have been working on yearbook for a couple of years, and some of us are new this year. It was very touching to me to get to see students doing what they loved and being so passionate about it. Every interview, they were ready to talk about everything they've done that season or that play, and that for me was the positive impact that I felt and hopefully I gave others.
One thing I really enjoyed about yearbook was the diversity. We got to interview people playing golf, football, plays, anything, even staff. It was a really, really good moment to be a part of. It was also my first year.
Honestly, on a personal level, my favorite part was being able to meet new people around the school that I'd never seen before in the hallways. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to joining yearbook next year.
This is also my first year during yearbook as well, and it helped me be more open, talk to more people, because before I was like really shy and wouldn't want to talk to people. Now I'm like very open and can talk to more people and know more about our school.
Yeah, as everyone else said, being involved with the school community as a whole was really great. This is my third year, so it was really special to get to see how each year went on and be a staff on multiple yearbooks.
And this was my first year being yearbook, and my just like favorite part of being in like yearbook was interviewing people and like just seeing what they had to say and just like capturing it and like quoting them and just having the chance to like take what they said and actually like put it on like paper and like have it printed, you know, and everything, and everybody could see it and see what they had said. But yeah, thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. School board members, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would just comment that I like that you have a mission and a vision. Our vision is to have a positive and colorful yearbook that speaks to the whole community. That's a big role for all of you. Thank you for doing it.
No problem.
Other questions or comments?
I will just say, and this, you might be surprised by this, my first year of teaching, I was the yearbook advisor. So I want to thank you for all the time and extra hours and late nights that you put in, because I know exactly what you did, because I did it for 1 year. So
Yeah, for sure. We did put a lot of hours and hard work into it.
So several of you mentioned this is your first year. What made you get involved this year?
Yeah, so first, I want to add something really quick. Big shout out to Miss Fedora. She is legendary when it comes to this yearbook stuff, and none of us would have been able to do almost anything without her help and her guidance constant. And for me, she's one of the reasons I joined yearbook. Yearbook's one of my only classes actually in the building this year since I'm almost full-time college, and she is a positive person I get to see every day, and she makes all of the hard work and stress worth it.
It was my last year of high school. I'm a senior, and I really wanted to be more involved this year, and I definitely did. I got to meet a lot of new people and experience new things. We just went to the golf course, which I've never been. We got to ride on a golf cart and everything, and we got to experience new things, and that was really a big joy of it.
Honestly, I joined yearbook because I recently just moved here last year. So I wanted to I don't know, maybe meet new people, and I'm really glad I met them all.
I'm a junior, and I joined yearbook because I wanted to be more open and get out of my comfort zone and be comfortable talking to people, which I did, and met so many new people.
And honestly, I just really wanted to talk to people, just get their story. Honestly, I just love talking to people and socializing. That's what I like to do. Yeah.
Wonderful. And you get a credit for the class?
Yes.
Good. So are you all going to recruit somebody for next year? It might make your lives easier if you don't have to do so much work, right? Wonderful. Well, thank you. Great job, and we appreciate the presentation. Okay, so this brings us to item 5C, Student Board Representative Report. You go from one microphone to the next.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, my name is Sophia Mentz. I serve as one of 2 student representatives. Unfortunately, my partner in crime isn't here, Jillian Huberty. She is actually at DECA Nationals, hopefully killing it right now. So that's really exciting, and I'm sure she'll have lots of stories to tell when she gets back. I just have a brief summary as tomorrow we're doing our Student Data Summit. We have 4 of the surrounding districts. It's us, TCU, WEM, and Northfield, and we all get together and we get to talk about both positives and some struggles within our school district. The main focus topic this semester is about mental health and student-teacher relations. I'm really excited to dig into the data with fellow students, hear about their opinions, hear about the other schools and how they thrive or how they are struggling in this problem so we can all grow together. It'll be my 3rd time going to the Data Summit and my final, which is a little sad. But Faribault is hosting, and we're also hosting next year in the fall, I believe. So that's really exciting. We'll be at South Central pretty much all day. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll update you after.
Wonderful, thank you. Board members, any questions or comments for Sophia? All right, well, we look forward to hearing more. Thank you. All right, this brings us to item 5D, Read Well by 3rd grade, Miss Katie Rotvold and Mr. Nick Jurens.
Good evening. So Katie and I are here to present, much like Zach and Olivia presented the Ready for K proposed goal, we're here to present the Read Well by third grade goal. There it comes. Okay, next one. So our proposed goal, first of all, it aligns with the work we're already doing with our world's best workforce, much like the Ready for K goal, is that all third graders can read at grade level. And so our goal, current goal, is that we would increase the proficiency on the MCA reading assessment from 28.1% to 35.1%. Now there's one, there's an extra bullet there. That data, which Katie will speak to in a moment, is based upon our current data. However, our third graders are actually in the midst of taking the MCAs right now. And so we will actually have some fresh data coming out shortly. And end of August, excuse me, of this summer, those scores will no longer be embargoed. So then we'll be able to look at that fresh data to potentially adjust that 35.1%. Our hope is that we can bump that up because now our students have been with us for an entire year in-house. And one of our strategies that we're going to share, we've been seeing a lot of positive gains in that. But so this would actually get revisited again at the end of August. So I'm going to let Katie talk a little bit about how we came up with these numbers.
Yeah, so this representation might be a helpful way to look at our MCA data. Some people have asked before to see the cohort data, and so this is one way to do that. So if you look at the yellow going diagonally, that is a cohort, orange, so on and so forth. So you'll see that break in data in 2020 when we did not take the MCAs. The 2021 should also have an asterisk because that was not reported in our accountability data, but that is based on who actually tested that year. And so that data is there, but it does have an asterisk next to that. The 2022 then is our most recent that we currently have. And so we were basing our goal off of that 6.2% increase in third grade from 2021 to 2022. We certainly hope that we can bump that goal up even higher based on the data that we get coming in this year. I think one other thing to note is that while we'll use that third grade as our marker for the Read Well by third grade, we also do really want to pay attention to how they progress through the rest of their elementary reading and how we are handing them off into middle school and then high school. So looking at that cohort data kind of shows us how they are building on their reading as we go through. So now we'll just go into the specific strategies that we're going to use to move all of our third graders in their reading. So the first strategy that we have is looking at our Tier 1 instructional practices and materials. I have mentioned before in a few different audiences that we will be looking at an adoption of a new K-5 ELA curriculum. And one of the major tools that we'll be using for that is a very detailed rubric that is aligned to the science of reading research. We already have a group of teachers who have worked with me this spring to meet with MDE, and another Carrie is associated with the University of Minnesota, and they are developing a rubric that we will adapt and use for our purposes as we start to review those curriculums. So we want to make sure we start early, that we can go through and really make a choice that is going to fit our needs and help us move forward.
Our second strategy is that we will continue to beef up our win time model. So we are currently in about month 5 of implementing win time as which uses our press interventions for reading intervention. It typically takes about 3 to 5 years to see meaningful change, and press says it takes 4 years to be fully implemented, so next year would be year 2 of that. We've, as a building principal that sits in on all those win time meetings, we've seen tremendous growth this year in just, like I said, 5 months. We already can see some of the adjustments that we need to make, some larger adjustments for next year. And then Katie's been really big on making sure that we do our fidelity checks, and we know that we're stronger in some areas than others in terms of checking on how are we implementing this with fidelity? And so we're looking at beefing that up as well, which should only strengthen that win time model.
And then our third strategy is to look at our professional development plan. We already have our literacy coaches who do specific coaching around evidence-based practices and AVID strategies. So continuing that and maybe even making things a little bit more explicit about how our teaching practices connect to our EBPs and AVID strategies. And then the other one that we're really excited about exploring and getting started is a science of reading learning opportunities. One, of course, is the infamous letters training that the state of Minnesota started a cohort. We have about 15 people who are participating in it now. We've been in it for the last year and a half, and we will be finishing up that cohort at the end of this spring. And so we are looking to start a new cohort and adding in more teachers this time. Our initial group that got started, we wanted people to go through it before we asked teachers to dedicate that kind of time to a professional development opportunity. It's about 150 hours of work as advertised. I would say it's even more than that. And so we want to make sure that teachers understand what the commitment to that professional learning is. So we sent out a interest survey at this point just to see how many teachers or people might be interested in participating in a new cohort. We already have about 40 who have said that they are interested, and so that is very promising. And so we're looking at different ways that we can accomplish that. And that is just a very deep professional learning about how kids learn how to read and can really influence not just your reading time, but your entire instructional day.
So just to recap, our goal from one of the first slides there is listed, again, noting that 35.1% may change based on our 2023 MCA results, and then the 3 strategies that we will employ to reach that goal. So any questions or comments?
Board members, questions, comments? I have a couple, if that's all right. If nobody else, I don't want to. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
If you go to the graph, the multicolored graph, if you will, obviously 2020 looks like that probably for everybody throughout the state and most likely the country, but correct me if I'm wrong, the 2021 and the 2022, obviously that's what shows Faribault, but the rest of the state and a lot of the country show similar declines post-COVID and whatever. Is that fair to say, or am I wrong on that? I don't know if we're any more extreme or kind of on par with what everybody else has seen. I've just read that there were pretty significant declines, through COVID, early post-COVID, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. What we can't look at in the same way that we usually do is the state proficiency average, I guess, because it wasn't reported in accountability data. And so we have our data based on who tested, but we can't take that 21.9% and see the equivalent in the state, if that makes sense. So on the state data, that will look like 2 blank data points. But yes, anecdotally and through different reporting pieces throughout the state, we heard about the very large decline, which makes sense considering how it was disrupted. What I do see really positively is if we look at our 3rd graders from 21 to 22, we had 10 points of increase in proficiency, and so really wanting to accelerate that growth, we saw that, and so I hope we continue to see that trajectory as we go into our new data. Again, in 4th grade, right, like huge growth there. Again, 2021 with an asterisk, participation was different than it had been or is usually, but just knowing that there was that big of an increase, that's not necessarily a coincidence either.
And then students that opt out count as somehow a 0 or a negative or something, right? I mean, they unfortunately, they're still part of the pool even though they don't generate any return, if you will, scoring, right?
They are part of the denominator, basically,
Yes.
so only those who are proficient can be in the numerator. And so those who opt out do automatically become part of that, the bottom number. The enrollment data, though, is a mysterious formula that they're using to figure out who actually counts into our accountability data. And so not necessarily all the students who test with us come into our numbers, if that makes sense. So if a student shows up in, like today, they probably won't be on our data that's reported to the state. So these numbers are based on the numbers that are reported to the state. And may or may not include all of the students who test with us.
Thank you. And the reason I ask about opt-outs, I thought that was still consistent. In the last, 4, 6, 8 weeks, there was a sizable article in the Star Tribune. I don't know if you saw it or not. St. Louis Park, I think, has hundreds and hundreds of students opting out, and it's reflecting on all of their scores in a very negative way. But yet, Sophia could probably talk about these tests and how excited kids get, or how kids just maybe mark C, 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 and just don't really care. And so anyway.
There are a couple pieces to that I think we do see that a little bit more at the high school level. And at that point, you're kind of like, well, what's in it for me kind of thing, right? In third through fifth grade, we're still in my teacher says we have to do a really great job and we're going to really try our hardest and all of that. And so there's a little bit of that piece about it. I actually do, not on this graph, but there's an expanded version of this graph that I have that has the enrollment number or the accountability next to the actual number tested. And there isn't a huge significant difference in our score, in our percentage proficient, not to the point that we would say, well, we should throw out this number and use this number instead. And so I do think that that's just something that we have investigated a little bit at least and don't see a real significant. There are some communities where there are huge opt-out parent movements where they have a very significant number opting out, and that's not necessarily the case here.
Mr. Bellingham, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if you could go back to that slide 4, I believe it is, so I want to thank you for the cohort information. I was the one that asked for that. And I think if you really examine it, we really don't have a lot of longitudinal data, just a couple of years here. But if you look at a 8 or 9 or 10, 11% growth in these, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in 2023, because I think this shows that what we are doing is making a difference and we are improving with this. So the data doesn't lie. The data tells us we are improving and we're getting there. So it's significant. So thank you for your work and thank you for providing me. My other question is would it be possible to connect on like a 6th, 7th grade?
I have it. It was just for this particular goal, wanting to focus on that 3rd through 5th as the read well by 3rd grade goal. So I can certainly share that with the board if you would.
Are those numbers pretty much the same and growth is stepping down as well?
There's a lot to talk about in that
Yes.
expanded graph, and so I would encourage setting aside some time to look at it with an eye.
I know going from a elementary school to a middle school, been there, done that, right? So, I would imagine there would be some differences with that. But thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Mr. Robichaud.
Just a couple of questions. If you could put that graph back up. There it is. Oh, there it is. The percentage that you're talking about here, the percentage of students who took the MCA that were proficient. Is that right?
This is so the percent of students who were proficient out of the total number who were on our enrollment list as being assigned this test at that time. So if they met our enrollment criteria.
And what is that? I'm sorry.
That's the mysterious formula that I can't even begin to break down from the state. They used to have a very specific accountability cutoff date, and realizing that was a little bit ridiculous to base our accountability off of an October 1st deadline or whatever it was, they have made it a little bit more nuanced, and with that nuance comes a little bit of confusion, if you are just asking my opinion.
So the enrollment is not the gross enrollment of the district?
Well,
of that grade level?
It is at a certain time it might be more of a window. I don't want to speak too specifically on that, I can try to find the test specs if you would like to read a 200-page document.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that the Department of Education has put you in that dilemma
Yep.
of having to explain that, but thank you for that explanation. The other thing is that, do you get a chance to do a skill analysis of the test to see where the students are falling or not as proficient as they could be? For example, the cohort going from 4th to 5th grade, from 18 to 19 was like 20% increase. Do you know why there is such a significant increase? That's positive. I'm not saying that's negative, but why is there such a significant increase? The same cohort of students with a 20% increase in proficiency.
So you can break it down into more of the test specs, and you can break the scores down into strands, but they are very broad strands. So in previous years, there was an achievement level descriptor. Well, there still are achievement level descriptors, but there was the benchmark level report where it really broke it down to the individual benchmarks of each grade level. That has since been disbanded, that is not meant to be used in the way it was being used. And so that report doesn't exist anymore. So there may have been a time several years ago that you may have heard about analysis happening at that really, really, really detailed level, and that's not really the way the test is designed. It's meant to be comprehensive of the standards, but you can have it broken down into like literature, informational text. Vocab is sticking in my head, but that could be NWA too.
Then I'll ask a cynical question. What's the value of the test if teachers can't use it to do a skill analysis of what the students need?
So I see the MCA value as being that comprehensive look, that really big picture of it includes information on all of the standards at a given grade level. And it is that like applying everything we know in the context of these questions. It is a well-written test, I will give them that. Whether it was a good day for this kid to test or not is a different question, right? But that is one data piece, and that, like I said in a couple of sessions ago, that's not the one that teachers use on the ground as often. That is meant to be for system level analysis, for us to look at our system across the board and to be able to make these kinds of decisions, like setting a read well by 3rd grade goal. The ones that our teachers do use on a regular basis are FastBridge data, their classroom assessments, their common formative assessments. Those are the things that really inform their instruction. Now, if they see in their MCA results that like, ooh, we spent a lot of time on literature and that strand showed to be a little bit different, then we need to go and look at what we were assessing and if it aligns up with those achievement level descriptors. So there is use to it for teachers, but we don't necessarily put all of our time into that assessment result.
I appreciate the explanation. It's very good. The thing is that that's what the paper prints
Yep,
are the MCAs.
definitely no.
They don't print the other tests that the teachers are administering to help with instruction.
And really those common formatives, all of those pieces come into this overall look. And so we do, if we are seeing good results in all of our others, it will lead to a waterfall effect into our MCAs. So,
Chair, if I could just ask one more question, I'm sorry. Is it possible to do a correlation between the tests that we give that teachers use to the MCAs to see if there's a gap, and if there is a gap, what is that gap? So there is that possibility of correlating them?
so there is tables in FastBridge that do an MCA to FastBridge comparison. So what you'll see there is that it's a higher level of proficiency on FastBridge that will correlate to kind of the meets expectation on MCAs.
Great, thank you very much.
Other questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, I've got another one for you, sorry. At our work session, we heard about early childhood and kindergarten readiness, right?
Yes.
I would anticipate, obviously, there's likely a direct correlation between that and this. If we want our test scores to be, I really don't even like the word test scores, but if we want our test scores to be better third grade here, like what we have in front of us, it's probably fairly correlated to having kids ready in kindergarten. Is that safe to say?
In what we are looking at and what we are proposing to do with our goals and where we are putting our financial pieces, it is very much a trickle up process. Yes.
So number one, you had a slide with the one blue dot, and we're looking at, or you're getting new curriculum, science, reading, research. I know nothing about any of that stuff, and I couldn't even fool somebody that I know anything about it. Presumably, what you're moving to is better, or right, we believe it's gonna have better results. Is there anything else that all of you feel that the board can do, or the entire district, to help with closing this gap, moving these numbers forward faster? If you were to double down, triple down kind of thing. You said it, Mr. Benty, in your superintendent interview. I mean, it's one of the things I remember is if we can get to these kids earlier, right, it's easier and there's less resources needed. And obviously, as Mr. Bellingham said, we're seeing good growth, but we're starting at a very low level. And so how do we start at a higher level, percentage-wise, third grade? Is there anything else we can be doing? Once again, I'm convinced we have teachers busting their tails, doing what they can, following instructional, whatever. But yet our numbers, I mean, we're not out there on the corner saying our numbers are awesome, right? I mean, if these were 75, 85%, maybe some would say they're awesome, and then some would want 95%, whatever. But you see what I'm saying? Is that a fair question? Is there anything else you feel that we can do collectively as a board to approve anything? And if so, hopefully you bring it sooner than later kind of thing. And I'm not here to criticize anybody. I'm convinced people are busting their tails, doing the very best they can, and yet our numbers have a low starting point.
Yeah, and I think, one thing to understand is that, when they talk about their strategies and their Tier 1 English language arts resources and curriculum, what they're doing here is, this is not just read well by third grade. This is a continuation of through elementary school, into middle school, and even into high school. So the fast bridge testing they're talking about runs all the way up into high school. So we are continuously looking at those pieces. I think one of the pieces around, you realize that they're not coming in and asking for more financial resources, although it is embedded in here. When we look at an English language arts curriculum review, it will be our most expensive curriculum review across the district. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in doing that curriculum piece, far more than any other department. So that will be an investment that the board makes. It'll be something that we have planned for, but it might be something that we need a little bit more financial resources on. Really what I see from the board is the whole idea of patience and give us time here. You're gonna see some quick wins that we're gonna have, whether through our win time or our fast bridge testing, or possibly even our MCA testing. You're gonna see some quick wins, but I would also prepare you for the initiation lag or the implementation lag that could potentially come after it. And just make sure that we're giving it the time, continuing to give it the resources, and we will continue to report to you the data, good, bad, or indifferent, and then, tell you what we're doing to, if we're doing good, celebrate with us. If the data didn't come back the way we want, we'll tell you what it is we're looking at changing, those pieces. So I think from a school board side is really critical to just give us that patience, give us that time, and we will continue to report to you.
Is there a parent involvement piece in this? And if so, what does that kind of look like? And are we trying to up that or not? I know I can't imagine. I volunteered. I shared this with the board at one of our last sessions. I volunteered for our Little Falcons basketball program at Lincoln after school for 4 sessions. I mean, it's just full of energy, these youngsters, right? And there's all different levels of needs of students. And so, you get 20, 22, whatever, 24, these third graders in a class, second graders going to be third graders. I mean, It's an unbelievable job, and my hat's off to them. So, learning doesn't stop at 3:00, right? And so I don't know what that looks like, but I know if parents if students have involved parents at home, obviously they're a leg up on the students that don't, right? And so when I just look at this and try to simplify it, if I took 28 out of 100 families, 28 students, 100 different families, and we had 100 parents raise their hands and say, are you happy with 28 out of 100 being ready? Right, I think the amount of hands go up would say, no, we want more than 28%. And I think they do, and I don't know how to communicate that or how do we help or anything like so. I'm not telling anybody how to do their job because I don't have any of the answers. I'm just asking if there's anything we can possibly help with. So,
Mr. Chairman. Go ahead and answer, Katie, or Nick, sorry.
Well, the one thing I would say is it doesn't show up in this presentation, but we are already talking about our family engagement strategies for next year. At Jefferson, we're very lucky to have an incredible family literacy specialist that is already starting to map that out, and we're doing that work. It just is not in this presentation. It doesn't directly tie to one of these three goals.
And I think we're foolish if we're not realistic and we take that multicolored chart and say, hey, that's what every district in the state looks like, right? It's not the case. Every district is different in their makeup and their things that go into that, right? And their clientele that they help serve and stuff. And so it's probably a lot more beneficial if we looked at what other districts that look like us and how they would compare if we really wanted to compare ourselves to other people. But Ms. Boudreau?
I just want to say, Mr. Chairman and this board, I'm pleased that we are prioritizing achievement of our students, and the cabinet has prioritized that, our superintendent. I'm feeling good that we're on the right path. I like the fact that Katie's doing a lot of analysis of what strategies we're going to use, and I trust that you are knowledgeable in putting these strategies forth. And I'm just thrilled that we're focusing on achievement. I think that's a great thing, and the board should feel thrilled too.
Yeah, I think one thing that this does, like you said, it helps prioritize. And so I think when we get kind of down about the numbers, we get in panic mode and try to throw everything that we possibly can. And I think that has contributed to some confusion about what are we really prioritizing our time and efforts towards. And so I do hope that by kind of simplifying this down into the top three, we can really say we need to focus here right now. And yes, your concern is important and it's going to come down the road here. So it's kind of just pacing it out a little bit and giving people the breathing room that you don't have to change the entire thing overnight, but you need to put a lot of effort towards these big goals for this year.
Other comments or questions? Ms. Moore?
Mr. Chair, yes, I agree that I think, student achievement is our priority. But I also, family engagement or parental engagement is very, very important. I said, especially I think in the younger years, if you can get the more parents involved with even some of the things to do at home. And I appreciate the fact that you are trying to engage more parents in this process. So thank you.
And that being said, for the curriculum adoption, being such a big adoption with our ELA, we absolutely are going to be looking for community and parent involvement in the review of these options. We won't have it necessarily all the way along the way, but once we've kind of narrowed it down using our rubric to a couple of really strong options, we will have opportunities for people to come in as a committee to review the materials and then do a wider community kind of survey with a summary of what we found. So there is plan for that in particular for this ELA curriculum.
Thank you. Other questions or comments, board members? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, that concludes item 5D. Next item is item 6, school board public comment guidelines. Mr. Pruitt, no public comments. Okay. We're going to move on from 6. So that brings us to number 7, consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Boudreau. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Just to remind people that we do not have a discussion on consent agenda, so that's why we skipped it. This brings us to item number 8, retirements. Mr. Mark Reavers, 24 years of service. Mr. Benty, is there anything you'd like to mention about Mr. Reavers?
I will say I had the luxury of working with Mr. Reavers at the high school when he was a speech pathologist up there for a few years. And I just don't know if you could find a much more genuine individual that was devoted to what he does. So I wish him well in retirement and thank him for 24 years of service to Faribault Public Schools.
Thank you for that. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the retirement of Mr. Mark Reavers.
So move.
Second?
I have Ms. Boudreau with the first. I'm going to give the second to Ms. Steves. Any further discussion or comments regarding Mr. Reavers' retirement? Mr. Bellingham.
Mr. Chair, if I may, thank you. So, to Mark Reavers, congratulations. Information about him, what an excellent teacher. What a leader in the district, in the buildings, and a mentor to both experienced staff and young staff. And on top of all, he's probably more of a better person and an outstanding person and individual. I always say that no one's irreplaceable. Mark's close to being irreplaceable. He's done so much, so many things. So thank you, Mark, for your years of service and what you've done, not only for the schools you've been at, but all of Faribault Public Schools and all of Faribault community as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? With those glowing remarks, are we sure we want to approve this retirement?
I was going to say, what, maybe we didn't, but
No.
he's going to go.
No, just following up, thank you, and best wishes on all your future endeavors, Mr. Reavers, so thank you. So we do have a motion, and we do have a second. Hearing no further discussion or comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item number 9, finance. 9A is the finance minutes from the March 13th meeting. That's there for your review if you want. Mr. Gertis, you want to come on up? I know you're going to have a bunch of things to report. So if there's any questions or comments regarding that March 13th report, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, we'll move into the item 9B, the budget, in Mr. Gertis' reports.
Good evening, everyone. So we'll start off with the ADM report. Again, the monthly report that I bring to the board. We are still currently at the end of March. Again, all these numbers that we'll be speaking about are at the end of March. Currently 22 students, let me back up, 22 ADM over our revised budget. You'll see that number in the bottom right-hand corner of page 1 of this report. That number remains unchanged from last month. So again, not a lot of movement from last month. We are still working on some PSEO number issues with our new contract with the South Central College and the state of Minnesota. So working through some things there with that contract. Hopefully we'll have that cleared up, which might change that number a little bit. But again, still over budget for the ADM report. So I'll pause.
When you say over budget, you mean that in a positive way?
I mean that in a positive way, yes. More kids than what we budget is positive.
Thank you.
Yes. Next report is our investment report. Again, all these numbers are representative of March 31st balance sheet numbers. And you can see month over month, we're up about $500,000 just in a cash position. If you look at the numbers there at the bottom, we did end up cashing in another CD, earning $407 with the State Bank of Faribault. But as you can see, the cash is moving in a positive direction. I mentioned this at the Finance Committee meeting that the end of January, we pay all of our second half debt. And when we do that, it usually brings our cash balances down to a lot lower number. And so now we're kind of working our way back up from January to the end of February, February to the end of March. And then I expect this number to go up again at the end of April when I'm sitting here next month reporting to the board. So kind of just ebbs and flows a little bit with cash. The importance of having that 9.5% fund balance. Moving on to the next report is our comparative analysis report. Again, the same things we look at month over month. You can kind of see that our electrical, water, all of those numbers are again ahead of where we were this time last year, especially the snow removal, but hopefully that one now is done for the year. So again, not a lot of change there from last month. We continue to, if you move to the bottom half and we look at our self-insurance account, so we continue to increase our fund balance in the self-insurance account. That number there is just south of $500,000 revenue over expenses. Again, that number is a point in time at the end of March of this year. So keep in mind, couple things, just to remind the board, we don't collect revenue on an equal basis based on our contracts in this district. So that revenue number is not simply 1/12 of the revenue that we get in any given month. And also, we still have April, May, and June left, on top of what we call the IBNR, incurred but not received. And that number really tries to represent all of those services that happened prior to June 30th that we won't see billed until July, August, and into September usually. So, any questions on that report? The last report is our analytical report, the colorful report. Again, not a lot of change. If you look in the upper right above my picture there on the screen, you'll see that again, we're looking at really trying to finish this year really close to where we finished last year in terms of a fund balance, again, with the blue line being 2023 and the dotted line being last year, fiscal year 2022. Moving to the next pages, again, I'll just point out some of the same numbers. We look at our revenue in the blue half circle chart at the top of the page. We're a little bit ahead of projected, so our revenue is actually moving a little faster than what we budgeted for. Again, that flow trends with the local and state revenue as well. And then the one that I mentioned at Finance Committee meeting last Monday, if you look at our projected expenditures, we're within 0.05%. So except for Richard, everybody thought that was pretty close, but Richard thought I could do a little bit better at the Finance Committee meeting. Sorry, I had to bring that up. But again, we're tracking the expenses very, very close. And even looking at salary and benefits on a year-to-date, again, at the end of March, we're 0.7%, off year-to-date. So what that tells me is that hopefully everything will end up exactly where those projections are that we talked about, and that we should have a good solid close for fiscal year 23. The last page that I do want to just talk about here just briefly, again, just the summary. Yep, thank you. The summary of the fund balances on the upper right-hand corner there in that bigger chart. Again, just remember, board, this is just a point in time. So Faribault Schools, we operate on a cash basis, with the exception of year-end, when we make all the accrual entries and we true up revenue and we true up expenses. So really what you're seeing there is just a point in time of where we're at the end of March, knowing that all of our expenses happen in real time and all of our revenue, for the most part, does not land in real time, which is why you see a lot of red numbers with brackets around them at the bottom of each of those funds. So I'll stop there. The rest of them are just detailed fund by fund that you guys can look at in your leisure, and feel free to ask any questions if you have those as needed. So, any questions on the analytics?
Wonderful, thank you.
All right.
We appreciate it. Thanks for all the reports. This brings us to item 9B5, Gifts and Donations, Resolution 23-41. I will read these and then entertain a motion to approve, and then we'll do a vote. Item A on here, Michael Boyd, 7D Mark II camera and lens kit with a value of $750 for yearbook students to take sports pictures. The next item, B, George Wickstrom Jr., $500 towards the Little Falcons program. Item C, First English Lutheran Church Fellowship Committee, $500 towards Faribault Middle School Student Council for student needs. Item D, Elks Foundation, Sherry Johnson, $1,205.42 to purchase personal items, hygiene supplies, and food for the Faribault Middle School Nest. Item E, Our Savior's Lutheran Church, $500 to the Faribault High School Nest. Item F, and F consists of several different donations, 4 to be exact. All are for donations for the Faribault Robotics Program. Robert and Marlene Gustafson, $25. Jay and Amy Gustafson, $100. Barbara Wagner, $200. And State Bank of Faribault, $100. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the gifts and donations as presented.
Mr. Chair, I'll move Resolution 2341.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion on these items? All right, hearing none, I'd just like to once again thank all that participate in these generous gifts and donations. Some of these are groups, so these groups are made up of people, and we thank them for their continued support. With that, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Thank you. This brings us to item 9C, items reviewed by the Finance Committee and are suggested for board approval. Item 9C1, consider approval of fiscal year 2024 teacher in grade 3 through 5 iPad purchase. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Steves. Mr. Rutherford, would you please take us through this briefly?
For sure. So the big picture here is, first of all, that we're here, I'm here before you because of state statute, and that any purchase over $175,000 needs to be approved by the board. So this particular purchase is part of a plan that I've been kind of putting in place since I got here 2.5 years ago. The big picture, making it built within the budget to sustain what we've decided years ago to do with our iPad plan. So before I got here, what would happen is every 3 years, somebody would come before the board and ask for a huge input of funds, usually $500,000 or more, to purchase a lot of iPads at once. And there are a lot of districts that do it that way. The problem with doing it that way is you end up with a place where you're not really sure what the future looks like until that next time comes around. You don't know what the purchase is going to look like. You don't necessarily know how much it's going to cost. And then you end up with debt. You end up having to go and finance that cost. So in particular, I'm a person who hates paying interest. And it kind of drove me crazy that within my budget, I was paying interest off of purchases of iPads. So I spent some time and laid out a plan that's about a 10-year plan at this point for a cycle of purchasing. We got through the first 2 purchases, and we actually, with both the middle school and the high school iPads that are listed at the bottom of that chart there, those both ended up actually being funded through the federal government through some COVID relief funds, which was amazing because it then let us do some other projects that really needed to get done in buildings, and we're going through and trying to make sure that things just really work simply for teachers, and that's the big picture there. From here, this purchase allows a cycle, so it kind of kicks off a process where the plan from here on out is to purchase middle school and high school iPads in 2 successive years. And then as those iPads age, we're going to cascade them down to the elementary level. So this really is the last elementary purchase that I'm planning for the foreseeable future. The reason we can do that is the limiting factor on iPads, generally speaking, is battery life. So for a high school student using it all day, every day, by the time they've used them for 3 years, well, it's the same as your phones, right? You know, and you've seen this with your phones, that the battery life starts to really deteriorate. And when a kid all of a sudden has to charge their iPad during 5th period, that ends up becoming a problem when they can't use it all day. For elementary, that's not an issue at all. They're using them 15 minutes at a time. They're using them kind of here and there. And so we don't have this battery limitation. So we've got these iPads that are great iPads in all respects. They just don't have the battery life that they used to. And those would be very useful to cascade down to the elementary level. So this purchase kind of sets us up for that cycle. Once this purchase happens, from here on out, every time we replace high school and middle school iPads, the old ones will then get cascaded down to elementary. And that's what this chart kind of at the bottom shows, that starting in 24-25, when we purchase those middle school iPads, we'd be cascading down to K2 and so on. The next page just kind of highlights a few of the uses of iPads, both what staff use them for and what students use them for. And that's kind of all there, and so I'll just maybe keep this open for conversation or questions if you have them. The big picture with staff is we're now providing iPads for paras, which we hadn't historically, and we did that for two reasons. One, we kept hearing from paras, we'd really love to be able to help students with what they're doing on their iPads, but we don't have iPads, we don't know them well, we don't know how to help them with them. The second thing is they didn't have a device at all, and so this provided them a device where they could get their email, they could kind of do their productive work, fill out their timesheets, all of those pieces. For our regular staff, we're really pushing hard for it to be an instructional tool for teachers. And the biggest reason there is we see a lot of districts spending $4,000, $5,000 on interactive panels, on panels that go on their TVs that go in the front of the room that you can do a touch screen on. Well, they're nice. And that's a lot of money per classroom when an iPad does essentially the same thing, and on top of that, it's mobile. So I was actually just talking to a high school teacher who has a smart board in her room, and it's an old one, and she has just decided to get that removed at this point because she's really using the iPad as that instructional device. The other reason for teachers to have iPads is they need to be able to test what students are doing and make sure that it's going to work for them. For students, there's a lot of things that students are doing on their iPads. And so I'm going to highlight kind of the elementary pieces. And again, at the elementary level, this is really kind of a here and there. I've visited lots of elementary classrooms. This is not an all-day thing, and we don't want that very specifically. We do want to see their creativity, and we do want to see them sharing their work with their parents. So Seesaw is an app that we have that allows them to do work on their iPad, and parents can sign up for that, and they can see kind of what their kids are doing on a day-by-day basis. They're using Book Creator, and they're using iMovie, and they're creating media and video and whatnot. And by the way, this is all data that I got through a survey of staff to see what they were having kids do. They're using Google Docs and slides, and they're creating presentations and writing documents. A huge one is that we have access to thousands of ebooks in multiple platforms. Epic is an app where they can use an ebook, and they can even have it read to them. And we've had a lot of feedback about particularly our non-English speaking students being able to utilize that, as well as it's just one more case where we can have a book and text in front of kids that maybe would be more difficult if we were trying to provide, necessarily a book for every kid. And side note, yes, we still have books for kids, and they still read real books too. We have a couple other platforms for that as well. The other big one is translation. We actually are working with staff to learn better how to use the built-in translation tools, which are pretty substantial. And then there's a few other things here as well. The last big one is in our STEAM classes. You heard from one of our STEAM teachers last month. And we've got robots now that kids can control with their iPads. They do that at the elementary level, and then they go on and do it in the robotics classes, and then we end up sending our robotics team to state. And so they're kind of doing this creative coding and working with robots and getting into a lot of interesting things that I don't think any of us got to really experience when we were kids, which is great. So there's a lot of a lot of ways that students are using iPads, and I'm willing to answer questions about any of that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Moore.
Yes, Ms. Rutherford. How, with the elementary students, how much time do they spend on these iPads?
That's a good question. In my experience, it's really been a maximum of a total of about an hour a day. And that's if they're, I'm saying that as a maximum. I'm guessing here. I would guess on average that it's more like 15 or 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. I will say that's a guess. I don't have strict data about that, but that's based off of observation and what I've seen walking around. We are actually going to be putting together some heavier guidelines this summer. We'd really like to ask teachers to really be focusing on the creation side of things and to be using iPads for what their strength is, which is those kind of like letting kids get in and do some creation that they can't do with anything else. And we want to kind of move away from the notion of using them as a way to get kids just to kind of be quiet for a little while. And I don't think that's happening necessarily a ton, but we want to be really explicit about that ask.
Yeah. And the reason I'm asking about this, and first let me state that, I think technology is a great asset in the classroom to benefit both the students and the teachers, as long as we use it appropriately and wisely. And our main goal really is student achievement gap. Or student academic achievement is our big purpose. Do you have any numbers on that in our district? Or?
No, that's a great question. So the thing about student achievement and technology is there's not a whole lot of direct correlation. And the reason for that is you don't hand a device to somebody and then just expect things to get better. And I will admit, that was kind of the notion 10 years ago when one-to-one programs started. It was, hey, let's give everybody an iPad, everything will magically change and it'll all get better. We did not see that pan out. What I do see technology is doing for kids is it makes a lot of the things that we do know work well easier and better. So for example, the data that we're talking about when we're collecting fast test data. I don't like to highlight the use of iPads for testing because it's not our most favorite fun thing. At the same time, we're able to quickly and easily get through that testing and get that data so that then teachers can use that data in win time and for other reasons to be able to sort kids and make sure that they're getting what they need. So in my mind, it's more about making some of those things we know are effective easier than it is about a direct correlation necessarily.
Yes. And I agree with you on that because just in my limited time that I looked through, there are mixed results as far as with iPads as to student achievement. For one study that says it doesn't, maybe it's negative effect. The other one has a positive effect. So you're right on that. One of the things that I am concerned about this, and I feel I need to bring this up, because of the screen time with all of the students, and I just want to bring this up because I think we need to talk about this. For instance, the American Academy of Pediatrics noted that a study with over 1,000 children, it was 10 to 11, and that would be who spend over 2 hours a day on a computer were at increased levels, high levels of psychological difficulties. And this was at a 95% confidence level. So what I'm saying is, I'm just a little concerned about that, and I have to clear this up in my mind. And as well as the Mayo Clinic website, they noticed that the greater amount of time children spend on the screen, the greater the possibility of children experiencing irregular sleep, which patterns leading to fatigue and increased snacking. That surprised me. The fatigue did, but that. And then also the Mayo website also said that elementary students who spend more than 2 hours a day, that's why I had asked you about that, and they use it at home too, using a computer, are more likely to have emotional, social, and attention problems. And so I guess, and there's another study too, well, it's ongoing, it's by the National Institutes of Health in 2018. It said for children 8 and under, too much screen time can result in changes in a child's brain cortex. Now, this is a beginning study, and as we know, the cortex is associated with thinking and reasoning. So even though we do get excited about technology, we have to ask ourselves, is by the use of the iPads, especially for the younger children, are we inadvertently adding to the behavioral issues seen in our classrooms? And I will say that our decisions have to be based on research. And as I said, with student achievement, there's mixed results. And, but I believe because of the behavioral problems that are possible, and we are hearing about this in the classrooms, that there is behavioral problems. I think it's in the best interest of our students and teachers just to take a step back and reevaluate what we're doing. And as I said, I'm not against technology, but we have to use it prudently. So I guess I am really kind of open for discussion here, but I would like to make a motion to table this proposal until June so we can review the research in this area. And I know some of the mixed results too. I will say one more thing. Dr. Susan Greenfield, she's a neuroscientist, And she's authored The Human Brain, A Guided Tour. Tomorrow's People are how 21st century is changing the way we think and feel, and Mind Change, how 21st century technology is leaving its mark on the brain. We have to really be aware. We have to be really aware of what is happening with emotional, psychological being with the children, because I know my own grandkids are addicted to the iPad, and that is just, so being the fact that they have it at home, that they have it here, those are the questions I have, and so that's why I'm proposing this, and I would like to have more.
So do you have any questions you want Mr.
Yes,
Rutherford to
like
answer
the
right now?
research have you delved into the research about any of the emotional problems or psychological problems like here that, and I realize this is a new, this is a relatively new research, and it takes years, but I am concerned about that, so
Yeah.
that's why I'd like to table this to think about it a little bit more.
So
And that's
I'll
my-
address kind of the question around I'll say health potential negative impacts, right?
Yeah, the psychological.
So I'm 100% on board.
Yes.
I've read the studies. I believe the studies. I am careful with my own kids, right?
Yes.
We have been very purposeful in addressing that. Part of the mission statement of my tech committee is actually to work on digital well-being. And that's because of the work that we have done with Live More, Screen Less, and we've done that over a number of years at this point, to work. So my general philosophy is technology is around us whether we like it or not. And I would rather see, let's make sure that we're teaching balanced and effective use of that technology rather than necessarily just banning it and hope that the problem kind of goes away.
Well, no,
right?
I don't agree that we should ban it.
And my point there is we've been purposeful in training staff, and we've had trainings over the last number of years on exactly the negative impacts that you describe. We've gone over some of the studies. And the point of all of that work is to try to be really purposeful about when we do use technology for exactly those reasons. And so we are doing that work. And then on top of that, as I mentioned, we plan on this summer getting together and put a working group to really look at some more guidelines that really dig into that purpose piece of it. And so that's kind of addressing some of that work there. As far as the motion goes, or whether there's an amendment or whatever, I think I'll let the professionals deal with that one.
Yes, what was it I was going to mention? Because when I looked at this for this plan, K through two, from what I've seen from some of the studies and what's going on, I was really concerned because even an hour, with a young child, and then they go home and they may spend another hour, 2 hours, and here it says 2 hours or more. So that's I really am really quite concerned about that. And I'm not against technology. I think it's great when used appropriately. So I think I need a little bit more time to digest this, and I think that we have a responsibility to our students. And that's why I would like to take a little time to look through this. And I see on this, you say you have till July 1st, correct?
So this is where it gets a little complicated, to be honest. So supply chain is a real thing, and whether or not we can actually order things on time. So the reason I'm here today is because, frankly, I want to be able to get the order in May so that it's kind of ahead of the line of all the others so that we get it July 1st. Because if we order July 1st, then they will not be in August. And then, quite frankly, my team is super crazy busy all the way through October, really. And so it really sets behind the timeline as to when the replacements happen. So that's the main reason I'm here tonight in particular, was to make sure that timeline was kind of followed.
Thank you. Other discussion?
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
Ms.
I have a question for Casey. Do the elementary students, take their iPads home with them?
They do not, and that's a very purposeful decision. I just talked to somebody from a different school district this last week, where their elementary students take their iPads home, and I kind of asked, this was an elementary teacher, I said, why? And they said, I don't really know, to be honest. We already know that we don't want to be assigning a ton of homework to elementary students, so adding all of the complexities of a device and charging and parents having to manage, and we made the call early on to not do that.
So just to recap, the iPads stay here at the school. The estimated amount of time that they're used is about an hour a day
Maximum,
by the
yeah.
students. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts,
Mr. Chair?
discussion?
Yes, I just have one more question. On the second page there, you said the e-books. Now, I'm assuming there is something in place that students can't get to inappropriate books.
Correct. So,
Do you have
Mackin-
a set plan there?
Yep, there is.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, Ms. Moore, would you like to make an amendment to this? I thought I heard you mention
Yes.
something. We already have a motion on the floor from Mr. Robichaud
Yes.
and Ms. Steves. We have a motion and a second. We're at discussion. If you'd like to make amendment, now's the time to do so.
Yes, I would like to make an amendment, and it's a motion to table this proposal until June to review the research. I really, when I started looking through this, I felt very uncomfortable with some of the studies, and I would like to I think it would be appropriate for the board to take some time to look through it.
Okay, so your amendment is to table this proposal until the June board meeting? Is that
Yes,
Is
so
that
we can
correct?
have time to look through it. Thank you, yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, for
Yes.
procedural, it's not an amendment to table, it's actually a motion to table.
Okay,
Oh, okay, thank you, John.
so you're making a motion to table?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to table this, until the June board meeting? Am I hearing a second?
Second.
Mr. Olson with a second. Okay, we will now vote on the motion to table this. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
I believe that was 2 in favor of tabling and 5 against. Is that correct from what I'm hearing? Okay, so that motion fails. So now we are back to the original motion to approve that was made by Mr. Robichaud and second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
And roll call, please.
Okay. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Nay.
Richard Olson.
Nay.
Gary Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 5-2.
5-2. Okay, thank you.
Thanks
Thank you.
much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the information. That brings us to item 9C2. Consider approval of deferred maintenance project of funding options, revised LTFM 10-year plan and resolution 23-42 relating to $10,770,000 of general obligation facilities maintenance bonds, Series 2023A, stating official intent to proceed with an authorizing the issuance and sale thereof, and providing for credit enhancement with respect thereto. I hope I don't have to repeat that. I will entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Mr. Benty or Mr. Smith, would either of you like to talk a little more about this? Or
It's actually
Mr.
Mr.
Gertis?
Gertis, yes.
Sorry. Thank you. I know there's several attachments in board books, so if you need any of them pulled up, you want to reference them, Ms. Yoakum, I think, is happy to help.
Okay. So back in January, I briefed the board on this, but I guess that was a long time ago, right? So I'm going to just start back at the beginning, kind of give you a little bit of the background of why I'm sitting here today, or we're sitting here today. And then if there's any questions, you can chime in there and we'll get into this. So as you may remember, we have a bond series 2017A that is set to be paid off next fiscal year 24. Our last bond payment is to be February of 2024. So while that is good news, it does leave a big hole in our property tax levy. So what we have been talking about, and the board authorized last year, and we have been working through our facilities assessment and all of our needs around our facilities, of how can we make some of those repairs happen so that we can get some of those things done without any added cost to the taxpayers of this district. So what we are proposing is a series of bonds, as Chad read off here, 2023A, health and safety deferred maintenance bonds, to alleviate some of the maintenance needs that we have in this district. The amount Chad read of $10,770,000 is roughly the amount of principal that we will be able to put towards knocking off some of these projects. In the board book, Nicole, if you can maybe just bring up the schedule of projects. I don't know which one it actually is. I guess it's not, it must not be out there. No, that's not it. So, but as we've talked about, and the facilities committee has talked about, you guys have seen the $40 million list of projects that we need to do over the next 7 to 10 years. So what Kane and his team did, along with our architectural partners, ISG, put together a list of, okay, what needs to be done first? What are the most important things that need to be done? That list was brought to the facilities committee. They vetted that, I think, a couple different times. And so that is the list that we are working off of. So I'm going to stop right there and ask if there's any questions before I move into the next piece of this.
Board members, questions for Mr. Gerdes?
Okay. So Nicole, if you could pull up the second attachment that's in the, yeah, thank you. Maybe blow that up. So one of the things that the facilities committee asked for, as well as the finance committee asked for, is what are our options? What are our options to fund some of these projects, right? And so what I have here is a list of these options. There's actually 6 options that we could use, and I'm just going to walk through with the board, very quickly, these 6 different options, and then we'll talk about the one that we're recommending, that the facilities committee recommended and also the finance committee recommended to move forward with. So option number 1 there is a one-time lease. So what the board can do is on our property tax levy, if they so choose, is to increase the property tax levy by the amount of these projects, in this case, just south of $11 million. It would be a one-time deal. The board can approve that. It doesn't have to go to the taxpayers. Downfalls, there's no ag credit, right? So our bonds that are falling off, there's an ag credit to it, so our farmers get the ag credit. And it would cause an extreme spike in our property tax levy, right? So it would go from about $12 million, what it was for next year, fiscal year 24, all the way up to $23 million, and then back down again, right, for the next year, right, because it's a one-time deal. So while it's an option, probably not a real practical one, right, to saddle our taxpayers with. Option number 2 is a building bond. So the board is all aware of what a building bond looks like. We could go to the voters, ask for permission to issue bonds. Again, it would be based on net tax capacity. So the spread on the debt would be the same as the bonds that are expiring. It would be even payments over the life of the bond. And again, the ag credit would apply, right? So that's option number 2. Option number 3 is a project levy. So going back a few months, if you recall, last year in November, the board attempted to get a project levy, also known as a tech levy, approved by the taxpayers in order to fund technology. This mechanism would be the exact same, other than it would be used to fund facilities needs in our building. The only difference is that Department of Education would need to approve this as well. But otherwise, that would be the only the only difference. A project levy is less expensive, so the cost to issue the debt is less expensive than a bond. It would be even payments, but there is no ag credit on a project levy. So again, our farmers would lose out, and the spread would not be similar to the debt that is falling off. The next two on the list are very similar. Both of them are, again, bonds. Both of them, again, a one-time process, and will require the sale of bonds. But option 4 requires us to pay the debt on those bonds that we issue with existing LTFM funding that we have today. So for the board, for the newer members, every year as a district, we get about $1.3 million in LTFM bonds that Keene uses to do ongoing facility needs, health and safety. It pays for a couple of the salaries for his team and his department, and a lot of other things. So if we were to go down this road, we would need to carve out about $400,000 to $500,000 of that money to turn around and pay the debt, which would then also short him those funds to do his yearly stuff that he needs to do, as well as it would not help us levy increase our tax levy to make up for the offset in the debt that is falling off. So any questions on that? Option number 5 is the same thing, other than it's a different funding mechanism. So instead of LTFM funding, it would require us to use our operating capital fund. So every year we get about $900,000 in operating capital. And for those of you that have been around for a while, that's how we currently are paying off this district office addition that we put onto the middle school, is with that type of a debt structure. But again, it would require us to carve out about half of that to make these payments back to on the debt. So again, not probably a real practical funding mechanism for us. The last one that we have is our facilities health and safety bonds. This is the option that was recommended by the facilities committee and the finance committee. Again, it's a one-time process. Board has sole discretion to approve it. It does require the sale of bonds and the expenses thereof to do. It is also based on net tax capacity, so it's based on the same spread as the existing bonds that are being paid off, and the ag credit does apply. So from a tax standpoint, it would be very close to identical to the property taxes that are being paid today. And there's actually a chart in here that I'm gonna show you guys in a second. And again, it allows us to generate revenue in order to pay the debt back and not use existing funding sources to do that, like options 4 and 5 above. Okay? So I'm going to pause there. Any questions on the funding option mechanisms? So, Ms. Nicole, if you could pull up the next one there, the third one, okay, and maybe make that one big. So, for all of you, there should be a copy that looks like this. That's what Nicole is bringing up on the screen. So, I'm just going to walk through this graph and show you really what, when I say tax neutrality, what I'm really talking about in this. So, we have on there fiscal years 22 and 23 are the first two charts, right? So fiscal year 23, the one that we're in today, right? Excuse me, these are not fiscal years. These are calendar years, so where the taxes are paid. I apologize for that. So 22 calendar year is for fiscal year 23. So the first year is for fiscal year 23, but that's with taxes payable 22. So we are paying the blue, which is our debt, our bonded debt. We currently have two debts instruments. One is the abatement bonds that we will be talking about again here shortly, and the other one is the one that's getting paid off. Tax payable 23, so the year we're in right now is for fiscal year 24. Again, we pay off most of the debt for 2017A, and again, then we have the leases that are on top of that. In calendar year 24, fiscal year 25, which would be the first year we're proposing the new debt, which is in the orange, you can see that the blue goes from a very big piece of the pie to a very, very small piece of the pie in terms of a percentage. Okay? And the orange fills in the difference. Now, if you look at the top of those, you can see that the tax remains flat from 23 to 24, 24 to 25, 25 to 26, and so on across, which means no tax increases to our taxpayers. Nicole, if you could pull up the next one. Thank you. The next one is a chart that actually shows the tax increase to our taxpayers based on tax classifications. And you can see that they're all zeros to the right-hand side, is that the taxes remain zero for all of the agricultural classes based on this funding mechanism that we're proposing.
Scott.
I'm going to stop there. Yeah, Richard.
Yeah, I've talked about this before, but in a way, yeah, you're correct. Taxes don't go up, but are we keeping them artificially high? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
So,
I would.
you know,
I'll jump in and say, we're not keeping them artificially high because we have buildings that require continued maintenance, we have roofs that have lifespans on them, we have HVAC systems that have lifespans on them that need to be replaced all the time. So I do not feel that we are keeping them artificially high at all.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not talking about the projects per se. I'm just saying is that, yes, we need the stuff. I agree. But just the concept of we're not raising taxes. In my opinion, you are, because we could lower them. However, we need the roofs and whatever, updated, HVAC systems, which I agree. But I'm just talking about that concept of, we have an opportunity to lower taxes. However, we have needs, but that's all I'm talking about.
Yep, so I would say if the board went that route and said, take the opportunity to let this fall off, I can guarantee you, we're gonna be coming back in 3 to 5 years and saying, we now need more money because we've had roofs that have gone bad, water that has infiltrated our buildings, pieces like that. It won't cost less in the future. It'll cost more.
Which I agree.
And yeah, I would agree with you. We have that opportunity, but we really don't, right? Because to Jamie's point, school districts have very, very few mechanisms to raise money to do ongoing facilities. If we were a private business, they would just go out and raise the prices on their end product at will and do the work. If we were the city, they would just vote to do the work. If we were the county, they can just vote to do the work, right? A school district doesn't have that luxury. We don't have the luxury as any other type of business across the spectrum in order to do that. This is one of the very few things that's laid out in state statute that we actually have the opportunity to do. And I would agree, if you look at the chart that we don't have out there, and I apologize for that, ISG is figuring it was 7% inflation year over year. So to Jamie's point, this 10.7 million, you wait 3 years, now it's 13 million. You wait 5 years, and it becomes 16 million or 17 million, and so on and so forth. And 7% might be conservative, right, in this day and age that we're in today. So any other questions on this? I have one more part to this, but I'm going to stop here to This is a lot, especially for new board members that probably haven't gone down this road before, right?
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Gertis, I think you'll prove your need by the projects you tell us that are in desperate need of improvement. So I'm eager to look at the list.
Yep, and we can send that out for the board members that haven't seen that. I apologize, that did not make the board book,
Okay.
but we will get that added.
As you mentioned, the facilities and the facilities seen it twice, I think, finance once, so.
Couple other things just procedurally, so that the board is aware. Once, if the board so chooses tonight to approve this, we issue a formal advertisement, right, so the public all knows what's going on, so that we don't end up doing this in a silo, right? There's a formal advertisement that needs to go out and published in the paper. And then the next steps from there is that we physically sell the bonds. Now, the bond sale, because we aren't going to be starting this summer, we won't be starting until the summer of '24, or maybe spring of calendar year '24. The bond sales might get pushed off a little bit, right? Which ultimately just saves us accrued interest on the sale of those bonds. There's no reason to sit on the money and pay interest when we don't need
You
it.
sell them now, maybe at 4.5%, reinvestment 5% I think they call it arbitrage, right?
Yeah, I think there's a
Maybe
a thing called
maybe we're not legally able to do that.
Well, that's what arbitrage means, right? We legally can't do that, so.
Nice try.
But we pay a lot of money to prove that we didn't do that either, just for the record, right? So, but you are right, Chad. So, that's kind of how it would go. So, when the board, or when we sell the bonds, the board would need to approve the sale of those bonds, which would take board action at some time out in the future, probably this fall sometime. The other thing, I'm sorry.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we will vote on this tonight, right?
We're looking to vote on the approval of the resolution to allow you to go out and start the process of selling the bonds and all that stuff. Is that,
And the Department of Education, and we've had an initial meeting with them, but they also need to approve the architectural plans and engineered plans by ISG. And that process takes, I don't know, a couple months probably, right? With the individuals that approve those.
because you don't have the list in front of us, can you just highlight, the majority of the list falls into really two buckets, if you will, two different categories?
You want to talk?
Majority of the list is air handling units.
Yep. Okay.
Also, the boiler at the middle school that is on the 10-year plan today, as well as the boiler at McKinley as well. So those two projects alone are about $2 million, or just south of $2 million to do those projects.
To confirm, nothing on the list from ALC, nothing on the list from Nerstrand, is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
And I'm not excluding them, but I'm just
Yeah.
restating what I've seen, so.
Right.
Okay. Ms. Boudreau, does that answer your question?
Well, Mr. Chair, that helps. I think if you could give us some priorities like that, just something here tonight. I appreciate hearing about the two boilers, 2 million there. Just anything that you could share
The other
tonight
projects
would be helpful.
The other projects that I can talk to off the top of my head are upgrades to the fire alarm systems. I think at most buildings that allows for voice over the, what do they call it? Voice over the system, voice alert. The estimation for all of those was in the neighborhood of $3 million for all the buildings, because all the devices and the head-end panels would need to be replaced at each of those sites. Kane talked about all the HVAC units. One of the bigger projects that we will be doing that I think is just south of $5 million are all the air handling units here at the middle school. Along with the boiler, it's all one big package. So I think overall, between all of that, it was about $6.5 million, I think, at the middle school alone, to upgrade that. There was a few boilers at Jefferson, few air handling units at Jefferson, air handling units at Lincoln. Roosevelt is getting done this summer, so I think that was not a lot that's happening at Roosevelt, and there was two or three air handling units at McKinley that round out the list.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, if you can send that list later tonight yet or tomorrow morning, that'd be wonderful, so.
I can send it as soon as I go back to my seat.
Oh, okay. No, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have others?
I have one other thing that goes along with this project, and they're actually the last two attachments that are in your board agenda, and I'm going to apologize. You will need a magnifying glass and then some to physically read them, but they are in PDF, so you can blow them up. Those are the revised LTFM 10-year long-term plan for both the expenses and the revenue. And for those of you that were around last July, the board approved the 10-year plan in July as an annual event that the board does every year. Because we are using LTFM bonds, health and safety LTFM bonds, the 10-year plan does need to be updated and revised as well and submitted to the Department of Education along with all of our other documents that we need for approval. So what you see on here, besides the microscopic print, is under Section 2 of this plan. You will see the projects, not the actual projects, but the actual dollar amounts to the projects listed over the next 3 to 4 years of that. The other document just basically shows the revenue stream for those as well. So that's all you really have here. And if you're trying to read that on paper, good luck to you.
Ms. Moore, you have a question or comment?
Blow it up.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I did have to blow it up, and okay, I'm not sure which one is one of these. It's 23, I just want to clarify in my mind. Fiscal year, it says 2023. Is fiscal year or is it calendar year, right?
That goes by fiscal year.
Fiscal, okay.
Yes.
Fiscal year 2024. There's a big jump at the bottom there. It's 11,861,000. Oh, no, that's million, excuse me.
It's 11 million, so that's.
So why, yeah, I just want to know.
That's the total with interest and everything included in the document.
Okay, all right.
So you must be looking at the revenue side.
Yes, I'm looking at the revenue side,
Yep,
right.
that's exactly it, because we will receive
Right.
all the revenue
From-
in fiscal year 24.
Okay,
So all the revenue will come in on the sale of the bonds.
right, and
Which will
that's what
happen next.
this is.
Yep.
And then the second page, they have 24, it's fund balance, so this would be, yeah, okay. 9 million, then that's what you would use for the projects then?
On the
Expense side, right.
In section 2.
Yes.
You will see the dollar amounts splattered out between fiscal year 24, 25, 26.
Yes.
And 27, and hopefully they add up to the same amount as the revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Scott, once a bonds get sold, you've got the money.
Yes.
Where do you put it?
So,
Are you investing it?
We are investing it in, yes. So to your point and to Chad's point earlier, we are investing it legally, right? In a
As compared to illegally?
So what Chad was alluding to with the term arbitrage, and it's probably a good thing we could just bring up here now too, is that it is illegal to sell bonds and try and make money off the interest of those bonds, right? And so that definition is called arbitrage. And so every year we have to go through arbitrage calculations that need to be done by a third-party arbitrage specialist, and then they bill us about $1,500, $2,000 a year just for that calculation to make sure that we're not making more interest than what we sold the bonds for. So we do invest the money.
Well, we do get interest.
We do get interest, but that interest has got to be less than the interest that we pay on the bonds. We can't make more interest. So they have to be invested to make sure we don't make more interest. There's a whole set of state statutes around that.
Essentially, we're not investment advisors.
What?
Essentially, we're not investment advisors.
Right, that's exactly right. So, Richard, did I
So,
answer your question?
I'll ask a dumb question, but along with Chad's dumb question, but that So we get this 10, 11 million dollars, and there's a safe investment earning 20%, let's say, out there. Wow, that's good. I mean, legally. So we couldn't do that even though if it was legal.
That is correct. So let's just say, let's put real numbers to it, right? The bond sales are gonna be somewhere in that 4.5%, right? That's gonna be the cost of our money to do this, just ballpark, right? So there is state statute, and I don't know the exact formula, it's a funny formula, that we cannot be anywhere within, I think it's 0.78% of 4.5. So the most we could earn would be somewhere around 3.22 or something like that.
Now,
right?
is that Department of Ed or state law?
State law. It might even be federal law.
So they're encouraging you really not to go for high interest, even though that would benefit us, right?
Correct. Correct. We would be in trouble, big trouble with not only the state of Minnesota, we'd be in big trouble with the IRS and the Department of Revenue and probably umpteen other offices that I couldn't even think of.
And then you would take responsibility for this.
Well, since Chad's on record saying
Oh,
arbitrage at the board table, I think he's probably the.
There's 7 of us
right
that would
there.
be trouble.
Mr. Roche?
Mr. Chair, so any of the interest that we earn on that has to go for reducing the bond, does it not?
Or to do more projects.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Can't go into the general fund.
that is correct. All this money goes into the construction fund and is spent out of Fund 6. Yep.
Other questions or comments?
So just to reiterate, we're just voting today that he just starts the process.
And then they'll go through the process of selling the bonds and that whole legal process, correct?
That is
right?
correct. Yep, advertising, getting approval from the Department of Ed, and then at some point in time down the road, bringing it back to the board to approve the sale of the bonds with another resolution.
And then from there, do you need any further approval on the projects itself, or that's included in this?
No, once that goes to the Department of Ed, that's all part of it.
That's okay, because they have to do their review and comment.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Other questions, comments? Okay, we do have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Hearing no other, you have comment? No, okay. Hearing no other comments, Ms. Steves, this is a roll call, so I'll let you do that.
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Wonderful, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
This brings us to item 9C3, consider approval of Faribault Middle School bus parking lot. I don't think either of you need to leave, so
No,
stay right there if you would. So I will entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Moore. Gentlemen, you want to talk a little bit more about
Yep.
this, if you would, please?
so as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about abatement bonds because they just don't want to go away for us. So again, to give the board background, in 2019, the board issued the Series 2019A abatement bonds. And abatement bonds for the new board members can only be used for parking lot repair, parking lot creation, or any structures that lead from a designated parking lot into the building. So sidewalks, or whatever, okay? So the project was done back in 2019, 2020. I wasn't here, Kane was here, but, the abatement, the money that we received was way more than the cost of doing the work. So we had this bucket of money left that was tied to those 4 projects. So last spring and summer, we came to the board and said, hey, we have this bucket of money, and we did the projects that we had to do, and we would like to get board approval to do another project, because we have this money left over that we have to spend. And thus we did and went and did the project over at Jefferson Elementary, where they redid the entire parking lot, connected that up to 10th Street, and made that all flow, through that. Well, because we are doing such a good job of procurement, that project came in about $83,400 and some odd dollars, less than what we had left. So we still have a bucket of money sitting in the bank, making very little interest, Richard, just for the record. But it's to the tune of the $83,412 that, again, we need to spend on parking lot work. And so Kane sat down, again, with his group and determined that the bus loop out here, whatever we want to call it, out whichever direction we are, thank you, Chad, is the next parking lot that needs to be repaired with this bucket of money. So what we are asking the board in front of you is to accept the bid from Bituminous Materials Incorporated out of Faribault here to do that work. Their quote, which was the only quote that we actually received for this work, is $89,289.50, which is slightly more than the bucket of money that we have left, but LTFM will be used to pay for the difference from that. So I'll let Kane talk a little bit specifically about what they're actually going to do to the parking lot, but you also have the quote in front of you in the board agenda that lays out the scope there as well.
Scott, you were going to get a second bid, but they didn't come through, or what story?
We asked actually 3 people for quotes. Again, Richard, I'm going to use the word quote because this is not a bid situation. It does not fall under state statute 471 bid law. It's just a quote. So we did. We asked 3 people. One turned us down. One actually never responded. And the third one you're looking at. So, yeah, it was just only the one, which happens to be the one that does 90+% of our parking lot work. Correct me if I speak out of turn. Across the district. So they're very familiar, obviously, with the schools. You want to just talk a little bit about what they're actually going to do to the parking lot?
Yeah, so what they're looking to do is just like a 2-inch mill over the whole parking lot. So they'll grind 2 inches off and then put a new layer down on top of what's left of the parking lot. Basically all they're going to do.
What about the subsoil? About if they find anything?
If they find anything, they got provisions in there for,
And that's an extra?
that would be extra.
That would be, above and beyond the $89,000, yep. If they find anything when they tear it all up. That is correct. Which, as you know, Richard, could add up, depending on what's under there.
Yeah.
Could add up to real money, right, at the end of the day.
Gentlemen, what's kind of the life expectancy of the project when they redo it? Is it should be good for another 8 years, 10 years, 12 years? I mean, obviously with our environment, right? But what's kind of a guesstimate?
I would like to see it last at least another 10, 15.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Gotcha, thank you. Other questions or comments for these 2 individuals?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I'm not sure how much is this bid over what we have to spend?
As of right now, it is $5,100 and about $24.
Okay. Can we negotiate? Is there anything we can do later that could not make it over what we have to spend? Or is that naive to ask that question?
Yeah, it'd be tough to try to do that. You'd have like patchwork.
Well, like striping or?
Well,
I
you legally
see all
have
the
to
things.
stripe a parking lot. That's required, right? The city would make you do that. I think another way, Linda, of looking at this is the $83,000 that we have is really savings from another existing project. So really what we're doing is we're taking $83,000 off of the 10-year LTFM plan by using the bucket of money that we save from an existing project done last spring. Yeah, last spring. Would be, another way of doing it,
I understand, Mr. Chairman, I get that, but we have to spend an additional amount of money. And I'm just mentioning it.
Other questions or thoughts? Okay, hearing none. We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Moore. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 9C4. Consider approval of expanded grant writing / grant management and youth programs coordinator. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Mr. Benty, would you like to talk a little more about this and maybe have Mr. Pruitt as well, or however you want?
Yeah, so actually, Ms. Steves and Dr. Robichaud were with me up at the Capitol when we met with some legislators month and a half ago now. And they were talking about the different proposals that would be coming. As we listened to the governor's aides speak on the governor's proposal piece of it, what I refer to as the G word came up over and over and over again. Grant, grant, grant. And it started to really create a buzz in the room of, how are we going to get all of these grants? And I actually had some people around me saying, I think I'm going to have to go back and look to hire a grant writing firm or find a grant writer or that. So inevitably, Zach and I were already kind of talking about this in his future life. He owned a grant writing business, has spent considerable time doing that. I'll let him talk about all the amount of money that he has raised writing grants. He's taken that role on for us in some of these areas as well. But what we're looking for is a $21,000 investment from our general fund that Zach and I are very confident will pay back at least tenfold. All right, so we're very confident that we will get at least $250,000 out of his grant writing services, especially with that language being used very, very widely throughout the governor's proposed budget. So.
Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
Okay. Board members, questions or comments before we have a vote?
Yes,
Ms.
Mr.
Moore.
Chair. Yeah, does this include, and first of all, I'd like to say that I think bringing money in through grants is a great idea. And I think that, Zach, that you do an absolutely outstanding job, and I'd like to publicly thank you. But does this include some oversight? And what I mean by that is, when we have grants we always think of them as free. We don't have to give it back, the money. But there's always stipulations or requirements in order to receive a grant. And we want to make sure that they don't go against our goals as a school district and our achievement goals for our students. We need to make them in line with our goals, like I said. And in other words, will this grant raise reading, math, and science levels? I would like to say, so what I mean by an oversight is that before you go through the work of all these grants, writing a grant, I would like to see, first reviewed possibly by the superintendent or the district advisory council, and then by the school board. You know what I'm saying? So we see what the grant is, what is expected, what are the stipulations before you go through all of that work. And I think we talked about that before at one point, you and I.
So the current process for grants, and this changed back in July when I started, is that grants that are what we consider substantial grants. So we're talking, I don't know, I would say $25,000 or more, or somewhere around there. If they're brought to Zach, or if they're brought to someone on cabinet, or brought to principals, what happens is they come to me. All right. I will then go through the grant with whoever it is that's looking with it. It's usually they've gone to Zach. Zach sits down with me, we go through it, and the questions I ask are, what are their deliverables? Because you're right, they're not free money.
Mhm.
There are outcomes and there are deliverables that we have to perform to for that grant, for that money. Some of the grants that are written match very, very well with the direction that the district are going.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, I look at Zach and I say, yep, let's write this one, let's go for this one.
Mhm.
There are also times that Zach has sat in my office and I've looked at it and I said, I'm struggling to see how this fits with what we're doing here.
Mhm.
And he usually looks at me and says, I agree with you. And I say, yeah, you know what? That's a lot of money, but we're not going to go for that one because either one, it doesn't match with who we are, or sometimes even what the amount of work they want you to do for the grant is more than what they want to give you for the grant. Or it doesn't match with the direction or the goals that we're looking to set up for our district. And Zach has sat in my office numerous times where I've said, yep, nope, we're not doing that. I would caution with an advisory council simply because sometimes the turnaround time on these is very quick. There's a lot of times that he'll come in and say, this just came across our desk, it's due in 1 week. And I say, okay, I'm going to carve out time right now, let's sit down and talk about it. All right, yep, let's do this. And he literally has 2 days to fill it out to get it sent in. So for that advisory council piece, although it sounds like an excellent idea, for, I would say, the vast majority of the grants we're looking at, it's simply time-wise not going to be feasible.
What I'm thinking is with, if I may, with a substantial grant, and I'm not sure what the amount that would be, maybe 10,000 or whatever, I think the stipulations and regulations that are required from that, I think the school board should have a say in looking through those. You know what I'm saying here?
I will say that's a school board decision to
Yeah.
decide
And
if you're
that's
going
what
to, if
I'm
you want
thinking.
that authority. Honestly, I feel that's what you've hired me to do. But if you want to take on part of that, we can bring them to you every single month.
Well, I'm thinking of more of the substantial grants, like there's always stipulations and requirements. And I think we are responsible for that. And so maybe we can have a discussion of that, and I don't know what the exact amount would be, but I think it would be appropriate for a school board to look at that since there are always stipulations and requirements. And we are answerable to the public, so
Thank you.
that's what I'd like to see.
Mr. Robichaud?
Mr. Chair, thank you. And I'll rely, I believe that the grants that Zach is going to pursue and Mr. Bentia is going to pursue are going to align with our district. And they're not going to go for some grant that is not appropriate for the education of our students. Also, I would suspect that most grants that you've come across, Zach, require some kind of an advisory committee in that grant already. That a broad representation of people in the community that are aligned with the goals of that grant are indicated in that grant as part of it. So you're going to have to establish an advisory committee anyway for most grants that you're going to be writing for.
Yes, Ms. Moore?
But what I would like to see is what are the stipulations or requirements for that grant, because nothing is ever free. That's what I'd like to see as a board.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Can I ask, what other stipulations are you suggesting, Ms. Moore?
Well, with a grant, there's always, nothing is ever free in this world. And so there's always stipulations or requirements to go along with that grant, like you have to do this, this, or this. And that's what I would like to see. Not so much, and I don't think that's too much of a,
So, Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So are you saying that the board then would veto that
well, it
grant
depends on the
application if
stipulations.
it did not meet your standard?
Pardon?
If it did not meet what you're saying, this, and this, that you would have the veto power to say, don't go after that grant?
Well, I think if it doesn't go along with our goals, and I would like to see what the stipulations and the requirements are of that grant. So I don't think that's too much to ask.
Other thoughts or comments, any board members?
I guess I've worked pretty closely with both Mr. Benty and Mr. Pruitt on a couple of different grants that I've written in my professional, and I have ran probably no less than 500 by Zach and Jamie, just not even in partnership with the Faribault Public Schools, for my own profession. And I've gotten so much great feedback about, you want to steer away from this is a lot of work, I don't believe that either of them would be going after money without the needs of our students first, and without student achievement and top of mind. I hear what you're saying, but I have utmost trust in Mr. Benty and Mr. Pruitt that they are going after grants that would only benefit all of our students and student achievement. And that's been my personal experience.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just inquire as to how the typically grants are dealt with. I mean, I'm understanding that the process, but is the board approve the grants at the end of the day or over a certain amount? I believe, wasn't there a $5 million grant that the board had to discuss or deal with, or is that, I'm not sure, so I just want some clarity.
I can speak to, I'm not aware in my 9 years on the board of any dollar threshold that there is. I know that we have approved accepting of grants, and that's been a handful over 9 years. Some fund community schools, some of the grants fund, do they help fund behavior interventionists or something like that? And forgive me, as there's many of them, and how they braid funding together, I can't even begin to be an expert on them. So I don't know that we have any certain dollar amount as any policy. I'm not suggesting we do, and I don't think you're suggesting that. You're simply asking. I know they've come before us at times, and we've approved them. I don't know the rhyme or reason for that, and that's only me speaking. Anybody else can speak to whatever they recall. I don't know. So.
Mr. Chair, could I reword that? What is the board's role with grants?
Mr. Benty or Mr. Pruitt,
Maybe Mr. Benty could.
I would love to know that answer too, because I do not know why we bring some before you and others we don't. I'm not sure if in some of them it says that they require board approval or not. So that is something that, I would love to have some clarity on. Is there a dollar amount threshold that the board wants? Does the board, want to approve all of them, none of them? I would love some clarity on that as well.
Well, perhaps, Mr. Chairman, perhaps when I know that superintendent, I have made appointments to meet with him monthly as was offered to me as a board member, and I hope all board members are doing that. I would hope that any grants that come up that are of interest could be discussed at least possibly that way, because I would like to know about the grants. So is that something, Mr. Benty, you're comfortable sharing at our monthly meeting, monthly individual meetings?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just echo Ms. Steve's comments, and Ms. Moore, this isn't, I'm not inferring that you don't, because that's the last thing I want to do, but we've hired these two individuals. This is their expertise. This is what they do. I have the utmost faith in them pursuing funds for our students and that match our goals and hopefully that help student achievement. So I personally, I don't need to see, nor do I want to see every grant. If it's something major and it comes up or it's required, as Mr. Robichaud stated, that it's required that we got to vote on it, then great. But otherwise, quite frankly, I think we all have a lot to do, and I don't need to do more with it. So that's just my thoughts. But go ahead, Mr.
Just to piggyback up with Ms. Boudreau, I guess I too would be interested in that. I mean, we all are here for different reasons and have different passions. So I mean, if there's something that you think one of us might be able to provide a letter of recommendation, or, just throwing stuff out there, but I think here's a grant that we're going on, I don't necessarily need to approve it, but I would love to hear about it in any way as a community member that we can help support you to move student achievement is like what we're here for, so.
Mr. Bellingham, did you have something you
Thank
want
you,
to say?
Mr. Chair. First of all, I think it's been clearly stated by Mr. Benty that there is a process by which he approves, the grants are brought to him, and he approves the grants. To proceed to apply for grants, et cetera, there is that process. How it's being reported to board members, individuals, is basically up to him, I believe. I believe also in looking at the purview of the board, basically 5 things we should be doing as a board. This does not fall into any one of those 5. This is management decision bringing to the board, and we are not in the jurisdiction here as a board to manage or micromanage decisions or processes by the administration. So I think this would be a very dangerous slope to approach or go down to approve every management decision or application, whatever. So they have stated they will apply for grants that benefit our students and are aligned with our goals. I don't know what else needs to be said other than they have the best interest of our students, the district, and our community in mind. And I think we should honor that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Ms.
just one more thing I would like to say. We are our bosses on the school board. We are answerable to the public. And I think it would be necessary then, we need to know what are those requirements when we receive a grant. And that's where I stand. And so we need to know the stipulations, we need to know the requirements, and I don't think that's too much to ask. That's my stand right now. So.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or
I'm not
questions?
against grants, I think they're great.
Mr. Olson?
Again, I don't want us to accept a grant that's going to turn into a fiasco that was last December, November and December. I would rather avoid that. And that's really was disruptive for the community. So I can see where Ms. Moore is coming from, and I know there's time limits, but I just don't want to see one of those again in this board.
And I would agree. That's where I'm coming from,
It's
too.
just that we got to be very careful. And Ms. Boudreau and Ms. Moore was not on the board at that time, but I consider that was very bad for this district, and we have to recover from that.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts or questions? All right, so the way it sits, we have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. Roll call.
Can you do a roll call, Ms. Steves, please?
John Bellingham?
Aye.
Linda Boudreau?
Aye.
Linda Moore?
No.
Richard Olson?
No.
Jerry Robichaud?
Aye.
Cassie Steves? Aye. Chad Wolf?
Aye.
Passes 5-2.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. And thank you for the clarification, Mr. Benty and Mr. Pruitt, on how the process works and your vetting of it, if you will. The next item here is 9C5, consider approval of Spanish-English dual enrollment curriculum. I will entertain a motion to approve. Did I miss
Mr. Chair, no.
Okay.
If I could stand on this table, if I could get up that high without falling over, I want to entertain a motion to approve this expenditure for the Spanish immersion dual language program.
Thank you for that. I see Mr. Smith has left, and I don't know that standing up on that table would pass our workman's comp
Probably wouldn't.
policies and procedures, if
I
you will.
would take
It
full
won't be highly
responsibility.
But
Mr. Chair, I'd like to have additional member to help us, Jerry, on the table.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Robichaud,
Second.
and we have a second by Mr. Olson. Mr. Benty, this was presented to us at the work session, if I'm right?
Yes.
A couple meetings ago. Anything else from your chair? Otherwise, it is what it is. Any questions, board members, or comments?
I'd like to have Jerry do a cheer for us, if that's possible.
Cheer?
Because he's part of the cheerleading squad. I think you volunteered.
That's right.
That's right, so I'm waiting for a cheer right now.
Well, I think, Mr. Robichaud, we mentioned at the work session that we were sad that you couldn't join us for that meeting because we all, I can't say that right. Most of us, and maybe all, recognize your push for a dual immersion program for many, many, many years. And so
Thank you.
I think it's a great deal. So, and I think
Worth waiting for.
I think by the
Mr. Chair, we didn't have as much details we were been talking about for years, but, people getting data to us and, we never received that until recently.
You're right, Richard.
It just, somebody didn't do their job as we requested, but nothing was sent to us.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. That brings us to item 10, Policy Committee. 10A are the minutes from the April 4th, 2023 meeting. We do have 3 policy committee members here. Anything any of you would like to share regarding those minutes?
I think Mr. Chair, I think the minutes are pretty self-explanatory, very self-explanatory, what was discussed and what went on.
And Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On the second page there, it was a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Steves to move to recommend the board to have a retreat to define terms to be discussed by the board to be decided at a later date. So I think we need to look into that.
Wonderful.
I appreciate
So,
that because I think we need to define our terms.
Can we talk a little bit about that? I think this is a good opportunity since this is tied to that report. Let's see, Mr. Bellingham, you made the motion. Ms. Steves, you made the second. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your thoughts were there and what you would envision for us?
I can speak to my intent with that motion to recommend to the board here saying we need a board retreat, or to recommend a board retreat to, and it says define terms here. I just want to, define terms as to each individual board member as exactly, I want to rephrase this. So we come up with a common language so that when a word is said or an issue is said, everyone understands what my interpretation, what my belief is. I understand what every other individual board member and Mr. Benty, where that is. To actually develop, and I'll use this as an old 6th grade teacher here, a glossary of terminology for the board is a dangerous precedent because it would only hold, as Mr. Benty said, it would only maybe hold water in this district. Outside of this district, nothing, does not. Statute supersedes everything. Statute supersedes policy here, whatever, it's the law. So I think that would be good because in many board meetings, in work sessions, and in retreats, we've had the comments, we need terms, we need to know what this means, we need to know. This would I believe this would enhance that. But so when it says define terms, I'm kind of interpreting that each individual board member would be able to say what they believe and how they interpret that particular word and what they believe. So, Ms. Steves, I'll send it to you next if it's.
You said everything I wanted to say. Just finding commonality between all of us so we're in common understanding about what it means in our district. We can open up our phones, open up our iPads, whatever. We can't do anything. We can't define what's happening in other districts. We can't make decisions in other districts. I want us to be all on the same page. Are we always going to agree or, no, that's not healthy either, but having a common understanding when we're talking about these terms is really, I think, going to be really beneficial for us as a board to move forward.
Bless you, Scott. Thank you. Okay, so that's what we're hearing. Ms. Moore, do you have anything else you'd like to share on that?
I just have a question, if I may. So when these terms are used by state statute, the state does not define these terms. Is that the way I understand it? Just for clarification, for my point of clarification.
Within the statute, some terms are defined, some are not. So it just depends on what the statute decides to define and what it doesn't. If I were doing a research project, you have to operationally define every term. And so I guess it boggles my mind that the state puts out things that they, terms that they don't even define, because if this were a research project, this would not fly. So that's my point. I think we need to, and I think the state should define some of these terms, but that's beyond my pay grade, so.
Ms.
Thank
Boudreau?
you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, that is my concern. The state is redefining many terms, and they're putting it in state statute. The omnibus bill has a couple of those terms that they have redefined. Ethnic studies. The House bill defines it as analyzing how race and racism as powerful social, cultural, and political forces influence the stratification of other groups, including gender, class, disability, sexuality, religion, and legal status. That is one reason why it's important for us to all know what word we have in our strategies or our mission statement, what it means. I mean, equitable means a lot of different things. I even looked it up today and discovered there's different meanings. One is a subjective meaning. Subjective or objective. Equitable is subjective. It's subjective to who is defining it. It's subjective to an individual's view. We need terms that are objective, that everyone can agree on. And that is why I offered an amendment in the policy committee, even though it is a virtual committee. I don't know how the public can join in, or even another board member can be there because it's virtual. And I wasn't given the Zoom, how to get in. So Linda offered my amendment, which was rejected, which we are not voting on tonight. I'm understanding it's just first reading. But when you have terms that are not even defined on the state level, but yet they're put in a policy that's coming from a state entity, MSBA, that's concerning. That leaves that interpretation open to teachers, to parents, to students. And I think we're not doing our job. We're neglecting our job if we provide something that doesn't give guidance as to how it is applied. So I think you know my position on undefined words. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
So just following up on the conversation of a board retreat, you would be in favor of it?
I'd be in favor of a board retreat, absolutely.
Okay. In this being, if you will, common language or whatever, what it means to all of us, that would be our agenda. You'd be in favor of that. I believe that's what I heard from Mr. Bellingham, Ms. Steves, and Ms. Moore, right? Mr. Olson, would you be in favor of having a retreat? And I believe Mr. Benty would be included, right? That was what was discussed.
That was the
right?
intent, yes.
So, Mr. Olson, would you be in favor of having a retreat?
Sure.
Along those lines?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Robichaud, would you be in favor of having a retreat along those lines?
I would, certainly with one clarification. We're going to go through the dictionary and try and define all the words, or what specifically are we trying to come up with?
I will defer to the people that spoke about it and made the motion.
And
what are your thoughts there? How
I
we use it,
respect
or-
that fact that we should have one,
Okay.
but I'd like a little more clarification, please.
Well, go ahead, Cassie.
Again, I'm open, so I don't want to say buzzwords, but the buzzwords that
I think that's a good clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not to, so I guess my intent was, so once again, what I'm hearing is that every board member would share or have an idea or share what they believe and how they interpret a word, and the rest of the board members understand that piece of it as well. If you're going to try and come up with a glossary and label and all this and this, then it's going to be a long night when we have the retreat then, otherwise.
I understand.
Is there a list of words? I mean, are we talking about 2 words? Are we talking about 22 words? I don't know. Ms. Boudreau.
Mr. Chairman, I think a good moderator would be very needy and helpful to help us resolve all of these challenges. I have full confidence in a good moderator, not just our board, but perhaps we could, whoever we had for our last retreat, and I forgot his name,
Bruce Miles.
someone like that, he did a great job. He brought us together, and that's what we need. I think I think we think alike in many ways. We just have some challenges that we can resolve. I'm confident in that.
Are others in favor of bringing in a third party to help with our retreat, or would you like
Could
to?
we
Yes.
also call MSBA too, see if they have somebody? I do not know if they have anybody qualified. I would imagine qualified, but
Yeah, I mean,
I'll call.
as we all know, MSBA provides a whole host of support services and guidance and all that stuff. So is that something people want us to investigate with MSBA or not? Or Mr. Benty, if you've got to look.
I'm not convinced that MSBA has those services.
Okay.
Bruce Miles, if we can lure him back from Georgia, now that the snow is almost melted, maybe, There's actually a group that I'm meeting with, and I'm looking at my calendar here. I don't know if even I have it on my calendar yet. There's a group called Teamworks, which operates out of southeastern Minnesota, that I'm meeting with here in the next, I want to say, 2 weeks. And they might be able to work with that. Well, the person that reached out to me was Sherry Allen, who used to be the superintendent at Mankato Public Schools. So she's one of the people that reached out to me and says, let's just sit down. I can call her and see if they do this type of work.
And one other question I would have is if we do want a third party, how important do we feel that it's needed that that third party has school district of some sort education experience? Otherwise, my thought would go to someone local here like Lisa Salmon, who we met with a year ago, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, whatever.
Lighthouse.
And she's with Lighthouse Strategic Advisors, and we did Strength Finders. That's what I was trying to get at, and they work with the leadership team here. So somebody local is going to be a lot less expensive than bringing in somebody like Bruce Miles, we're going to pay for him to fly in. So my question is, do you feel that, number one, is there enough consensus that we should have a third-party moderator? Does that help?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to speak. I'd like to try and handle it internally first. We have spent money, and if you look at our budget, our school board budget, we're down significantly. What Mr. Benty sent out when someone asked there. So we've had Bruce Miles come in one time. We've been to Lighthouse a year ago, maybe not the new board members. We've been to Lighthouse and did that part. If we're really going to function cohesively as a board to the best of our ability, I would like to see between the chair and the superintendent as moderators, we can work through this. I really, truly believe it. And if we're truly accountable to the taxpayers, then when we don't have to spend on an expert, then and try it internally first, go from there without spending our budget on that.
Okay. Other thoughts? Ms. Boudreau, you were in favor of a third-party moderator.
Absolutely.
I think Mr. Olson, you were?
Yeah.
I believe we need a moderator.
Okay. Other thoughts? Ms. Moore, Ms. Steves, Mr. Robichaud?
I would echo what Mr. Billingham is indicating, that I certainly know Bruce Miles and I know Sherry Allen very well. But I think we know what we want. And to bring somebody in from the outside, we have the relationship that we have to start building and other kinds of things. So I think we know what we want to do, and I think that through your leadership, Chad, and Jamie's, that we can facilitate this very well.
Well, I just want you to know, I'm not a flip charter, so, Mr. Benty, if you're a flip charter, that's great, but I'm not, so I'm more of a pretty direct person, right? So,
Good.
just know that, if that's what you want, that's what you get, if not, Mr. Benty, you can do flip charts and Post-its and all that jazz. Ms. Steves, do you have any thoughts, or Ms. Moore, do you have any thoughts?
You know, I was open to both, but I think I'd like to try it internally, and then, you know, if needed, or as another option, maybe at a later date, we could do another session like this with someone from the outside. But I'm confident that we can get it taken care of internally.
Okay, Mr. Olson?
It could take more than one session. This could be ongoing. All of a sudden, we see some terms in some of these policies, like, oh, so this could be ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure what is ongoing is our mutual respect for each other, even though we may disagree and yet keep it civil, and we're all adults, right? And that's going to always be ongoing. And so I'll be honest with you. To think that 7 of us sitting here are going to come to some common understanding on 5 words or 7 words or 10 words, you know, I got some oceanfront property in Arizona, so all of it, because I don't know that that's the case. My hope would be that
How much? Yeah.
my hope would be that we can come to some understanding and respect of where everybody's coming from, right? I think that's what all the 3 of you on the policy committee was hoping for. I don't know that that's going to mean that everything's defined word for word, letter for letter. I'm not sure that that's what we're getting at, but so.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
may I
Ms.
ask a question? All right, is this retreat, the purpose of it to come to terms on terms? Or are we actually going to look at our mission statement, our strategies? We need strategies. We've adopted some through recommendations, you know, of the cabinet, but we do not have real goals in our mission statement and our strategic plan. So I was assuming this would be the real goal of our retreat. The terms are really a sidebar in my view.
Mr. Bellingham, Ms. Steves, you made the motion, you seconded.
I think, I think, in my opinion, I think that in order for us to do any sort of goal setting, redefining a mission statement, I gotta be on the same page as everybody else as far as some of these words. Because my understanding of them is different than Chad's, and it's different than Mr. Bellingham's. And so I want to have a goal-setting session and where, you know, we take these world's best workforce and cradle to career goals that we've been presented on the last 2 meetings. But I don't think that we're there yet. I think that we need to have one issue at a time. And I don't want to say it's an issue because it's not, but I think one thing at a time, and then we can get there.
Mr. Chairman, my priority would be our strategic plan. These terms are it's kind of silly, I think, to have a retreat on just the terms. That's my view.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms.
Yes, and I do agree with Linda on that. I think we need to, with whatever, you know, what Linda has said so far, I do agree with that line of thinking. And so.
Okay. So.
So, Mr. Chair, the discussion around this was the motion that was made by the Finance Committee.
Policy.
By Policy Committee, sorry, getting late, to have a retreat to define terms, to discuss terms by the board. Not jump into strategic planning. That was discussed when we had Bruce Miles, and that's work down the road. I think that was said at the last board meeting or work session. That is a July, August, September piece. I believe that was mentioned there. So if we don't have a foundation and understanding of this, the goal setting and the other information is really not going to be the best. So that's I think was the discussion. We got pulled off to the side a little bit here, but that's what we were discussing here, was to just have a retreat to get our verbiage out and be done.
Ms. Moore, you were going to say something?
No, actually, I think at some point now, I just want a point of clarification, what Mr. Bellingham said. Are we going to have, because we really haven't worked through our goals and as much as we should, to the extent that we should. Are we going to have something then in July, you said,
No.
or August,
So
or not?
our
I just
goals,
wanted clarification.
as Mr. Benty has stated, we have 4 major pieces to the world's best workforce. As you stated, I believe 2 weeks ago or whenever maybe even a month ago, you were going to have you and your team present to us in 4 consecutive meetings, the kindergarten readiness, read well by 3rd grade, middle school math, and graduation.
Correct.
That's going to be in 4 consecutive meetings. So 2 in April here and 2 in May. And I believe then your hope is to then approve those 4 at the May meeting after we've heard the last 4, so that because that's all in our world's best workforce. That's a document that's sent to the state, and that gives you and your team guidance on what you need to do to try to move the needle in those areas. And that gives a public goals, if you will, from the board all the way down of what we're trying to really move the needle on, what are 4 very high level focus points. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that is correct.
This up here or anything else with a mission statement and whatnot, we can work on that. That's going to be over time, right? But those 4 measurables are in the world's best workforce. Is that fair to say? I don't want to state something incorrectly.
So I see them as 2 very different things. So the goals that we're presenting to you over the next 2 weeks now, or next 2 meetings, I should say now, are to provide direction for our district so that we can financially provide direction for our district, and then through our professional and staff development, provide direction for our district. If we're talking about strategies and mission statement, now we're getting into strategic planning, which then we do need to bring somebody in.
Yes. I fully agree with that. So is that clear to people? It might not be in the order that people are crazy about, but is that clear to people? So let's go back to what was in the policy meeting, was getting together, hearing about this at a board retreat, just hearing what people's thoughts are. And I would encourage, right? I know we all think our thoughts are right and somebody else's might be wrong, but if we think we're going to come out of that with we're right on everything and somebody else is wrong on everything, then I do believe we're wasting each other's time. And it's going to lead to a lot of frustration. If we're going to come into that meeting willing to listen and be open and have good, honest conversation, I think it's a worthwhile event that Mr. Benty and I can do our part in attempting to, because there is no doubt we're going to have expense if we want to relook at a mission statement and all that stuff, because that's not a 3-hour meeting. That's an ongoing thing over a bit of time.
18-month ordeal.
So is that fair enough? And I also want to say, and I don't mean to minimize anybody's thoughts and whatnot, but it's been stated numerous times tonight with our presentations, student achievement, student achievement, student achievement. And I would ask, in all honesty, is there any one word that somebody has such a serious issue? I don't need a response tonight. Is there any one word that somebody has such a serious issue with that is really going to harm somebody's student achievement when we are looking at educating 3,500 or so students? Anywhere from pre-K all the way through 12th grade and even on, as we have kids who don't graduate in 12th grade but now might the following year or the following year. I'm just being honest. I'm not minimizing anybody's thoughts, and because I know things are important to people, But at the same token, if we get hung up on one word or two words, I think we're missing the big picture of student achievement across all levels. So, I think we have enough. We're going to plan a board retreat. Everybody want to look at their calendar? Typically, we do stuff on Mondays. Is that okay? If we look at a Monday, coming up in the next 3 weeks or so? Mondays, okay? Obviously, it's not a night of a board, of a work session. It's not a night of a business meeting. And we can, Jamie, or Mr. Benty, excuse me, we can send out a couple Mondays where we don't have stuff in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks. Is that fair enough? Okay, so be ready for your inbox. Okay, that is just the report. Now we're on to item 10B. The following policies are presented for first reading. Policy 516.5, overdose medication. Policy 601, school district curriculum and instruction goals. Policy 612.1, development of parent and family engagement policies for that's Title I programs, right? That's Title I. Okay, Title I programs. And then policy 616, school district system accountability. Those are presented for the first reading. Any thoughts or questions or clarification? They're just out there in front of us for the first reading. Okay. I see Mr. Robichaud has stepped out. He should be back here momentarily. So this brings us to item 10C. Consider approval of the following policies. Typically, we would take these all four in one motion, but if people have issues or questions and they want to pull them out, I know Ms. Moore would like to pull, I think you said, Ms. Moore, 506 out and 522 out. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. So then if that's the case, I would look to entertain a motion, to approve policy 508, extended school year for certain students with individual education programs, otherwise known as IEPs, and policy 533, the wellness policy. I will entertain a motion to approve those two.
I have a question on 533.
533, yes.
Let me know when I may ask it.
Sure, go ahead. You're good.
Do we need a motion?
Do we need a motion? Well, if she may want to pull it out and look at it individually. So
I just have a question.
Yep.
That is about our nutrition program. I'm not sure the title of it. I'm sorry.
yeah, I think it's just titled wellness.
533 is wellness.
Yeah, wellness.
In there,
Okay.
it references a Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010. It references, but
Yes. My question is, have we eliminated pork from our menus at school? Someone has asked me, and I need to.
I'm sorry. This was a huge ordeal in the fall. We have not eliminated pork from our menus.
Okay.
We will not eliminate pork from our menus. That was something that was fabricated and put out there. I met with Minnesota pork producers in the fall. We had a combined effort to get out the word that we do have. Now, here's what I will say. Pork is many times expensive, so it doesn't always find its way into our menus. Turkey as a substitute will find its way, so people will say, well, that's not a pork pepperoni pizza, it's a turkey pepperoni pizza, and that's true. It's a cost point. It's not a religious or cultural point.
Got it. Thank you.
okay.
No, it's okay. We can go forward with that.
Okay.
As far as I've.
So I would entertain a motion to approve policy 508 and policy 533 as they're presented in front of us.
So moved.
I'm going to give Mr. Bellingham the first and Mr. Olson the second. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Mr. Olson. This is approving only policy 508 and policy 533. Any further discussion on these two items? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Now we're going to go back to policy 506, student discipline. Ms. Moore, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve first, and then we'll open it up for discussion. I'll entertain a motion to approve policy 506, student discipline. Anybody?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Now, any further discussion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. When I'm looking at this, the student discipline, I just have a couple of comments here. On this third, fourth, fifth paragraph, they talk about the position of the school district is that a fair and equitable district-wide student discipline policy will contribute to the quality of the student's educational experience. Again, it's with the words. What's the difference between fair and equitable? I don't know if we even need equitable in there, because if it's a fair district-wide student discipline policy, that's, again, it's with the words, so.
Okay.
That's my, and then also, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to do this, and I'll, to bring this up, but I know that we do have behavioral problems in our schools. And my question is, should we have I don't know if I can do this now, but should we have a district-wide policy that is more strict, that holds students accountable? Because this really is.
Ms. Moore, how about if you bring that up during the school board comments in?
Oh, all right, because I didn't know what the
Let's bring that up.
protocol is. Okay.
Under item 12. And the only thing I'll also state on that is every school building has their separate handbook.
Yes,
And you
I
can
do.
certainly discuss
Yes,
with
I
Mr.
do.
Benty as well on that. But, okay, policy 506. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Motion
And
passes.
roll call, please.
Okay, yep. Go ahead, Ms. Steves. Will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Linda Boudreau,
No.
Linda Moore,
No.
Richard Olson.
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Yes.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf,
Aye.
passes 4-3.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to policy 522. Title 9, Sex Non-Discrimination Policy, Grievance Procedure and Process. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Any further discussion on this item?
Yes,
Ms.
thank you.
Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under Roman numeral 3, it says basic requirements for grievance process. Again, equitable treatment. It says the school district shall treat complainants and respondents equitably, however, equality or parity with respect to, and it goes on and on. Again, it's the issue with the term equitable. And for myself, if I do not understand what the term means, I think I have an ethical obligation to vote against it, because I can't vote for something that I don't understand. So,
Ms. Moore, I have and I totally respect that question for you. Since a lot of our policies, as you know,
Yeah,
you're on
yes.
the policy committee, I'm not.
Yes.
But so many of these are, if you will, in accordance with MSBA. Have you asked MSBA for what they mean in all of these policies when they use whatever words you question?
that would be a good idea. Maybe I can.
Yeah,
should
and I just think
contact
of
Terry Morrow.
Terry Morrow,
Okay,
right? I mean,
I
think he's got his law degree, and he used to teach law at Gustavus, and I don't know where else, but I think he's
Yes.
the resident MSBA guru with this. And
Yes,
so
I can do that. Thank you.
I would ask,
Okay.
food for thought,
Yes, thank
and
you.
good luck.
And Mr. Chairman, I have the
Yes,
same concern when I read this today, and I did look up the word equitable. I looked up equitably. There's different definitions depending which dictionary you're looking at. And as I mentioned before, equitably means subjectively versus which applied based on race, sex, religion, wealth, culture. Tailored interventions are sometimes tailored to be equitable, different for one student than another, based on, who's meting out the discipline or in this case, consequences or resources So I'm concerned too, and I'm going to abstain on this one.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay, hearing none. This is policy 522. We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Mr. Bellingham. All those in favor, please signify.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Abstain.
Linda Moore.
No.
Richard Olson.
No.
Jerry Robichaud.
Yes.
Kathy Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 4.
So the weirdness that I learned this year through my MSBA training is an abstention actually counts for the final vote with the majority. So you will record this as 5-2. We can record that Ms. Boudreau abstained, but in the final vote count, it goes as a 5-2. Is that what other people understand? I don't want people
Yes.
thinking I'm making that up.
That is
So
correct.
I did learn it this year. So, okay, thank you.
That's one thing, right?
That's one thing. So, and I would encourage, right, MSBA is there as a resource. You may like their answers, you may not, but since they're the ones, if you will, referring these, and this is what we're going off of, they should be able to have some foundational information, so,
Thank you.
yep. Sorry, I'm just making notes. Okay, so policy 522 passes 5-2. This brings us to item 11, other matters. 11A, consider approval of special education program additions 2024. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Mr. Robichaud. Mr. Benty, Mr. Daynard, anything you'd like to add here other than what you did before? Any changes from what you've presented on and told us about? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We appreciate it. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item is 11B, consider approval of emergency shelter 2-year agreements. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Steves. Mr. Benty, I think it's safe to say that we do this every 2 years. But anything else you'd like to share with us that's not on here or just to highlight?
Scott, correct me, I don't think any of these changed, did they? And Kane left, but I don't think any of our places that we have agreements with changed. Yeah, so they've continued to be the same places, so.
Okay. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Item 11C, consider approval of the 2023-2024 dental insurance rates. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Does Ms. Boudreau? We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Boudreau. Ms. Yocum or Mr. Gertis, anything you'd like to add to this? I think it's all there, but anything you'd like to add?
Nope, unless you have any questions.
Okay, any questions for either Ms. Yocum or Mr. Gertis, anyone? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Brings us to item 11D, consider approval of resolution 23-43 relating to the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contract of probationary teachers. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Boudreau, a second by Ms. Moore. Any further questions, or Mr. Benty, is there anything you'd like to mention here?
No.
Okay, any questions, anyone? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify. I'm sorry?
Resolution.
I'm sorry, it's a resolution, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Robichaud. You passed the test. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Gary Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you for that. This brings us to item 11E, consider approval of Resolution 23-44, rescinding the probationary staff non-renewed status for the 2023-2024 school year. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll move Resolution 23-44.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Any further discussion or questions on this one? Mr. Benty, is there anything you'd like to add here?
No, these are special ed teachers, so if you have any questions, Mr. Daynard can answer them for you, but we're just rescinding.
Any-
When the board originally non-renewed these teachers, the Pellsby rule in effect stated that any teacher on a tier 2 license or tier 1 license needed to be non-renewed, and we needed to post for 60 days. On April 14th, the Pellsby changed the rules to say that we do not have to let those people go and post their positions for 60 days. So we just want to give them peace of mind, knowing that they're going to the website, so if they're listening.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Steves, this is a roll call. Will you please do that?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you for that. Brings us to item 11F, district reorganization. This is a discussion item, so we weren't 100% certain what to call this, and so if you were wondering what this is, I know I communicated with you some background via email, but just wanted to have the discussion and find out if there's consensus to give Superintendent Benty and team some further direction. So, Mr. Benty, I believe, over the last, where are we? We're here in April. Over the last 3-4 months, as we've talked about budget reductions and resource reallocations, we've had several comments and conversations at a high level about, are we using our buildings as efficient as possible based on our student count, based on our programs, based on everything that we know. And I think we wanted to get through the budget reductions and the reallocations for this year, meaning coming up for the school year 23-24, and then come back and have this conversation. And I think this is what this is tonight, is being able to have a conversation around it, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so what we looked at in March was the personnel and positions reallocations. Now we're looking at, if the board decides to go with this, what are our physical space building reallocations perhaps. So the district has been, really kicking this around, talking about, are we using our space correctly? Should we have 3 versus 2 of this? What should our grade banding look like? All of those pieces, and it has always been discussed as a budget cut piece. It has never been discussed as a research-based, what would work best for Faribault piece. So when the board asked, during the budget reduction time, asked if we had looked at that, we did look at that. We did have numbers based around that, but we looked at it from a budget standpoint. We did not look at it from a research or from a what are other districts doing that are our size stance. So if the board wants us to look at that, what I would like to do is be able to look at that this summer, this fall, so that we can bring something to the board, sooner rather than later to say, here's what we feel our district should be doing based on other districts that are our size, based on other communities that look like us, and also based on our financial pieces as well. So.
Yeah, and I think one other piece to that is as we spoke about these bonds tonight and our facilities, and that's one of the points I mentioned is what we're going to do does not include any money in the ALC building. It doesn't include any money in Nurstrand. Nurstrand, as everybody knows, we lease out to a charter school. Most people, I'm not saying all, but most people have said for many years that they don't believe the ALC is the greatest learning environment for those students. And, we've quite frankly kicked the can down the road for some time there. And what are we going to do differently? And I think that would be all part of this conversation. And I think that's what we would hope for. And so are people on board with Superintendent Benty and leadership starting to explore more of this? And all we're looking at, there's no action to be taken. It's just more of a consensus of, yes, we think this is a good idea, or if people are opposed to it, why? Why is it a bad idea? So I'll open it up. Mr. Olson?
Yeah, has any thought, I mean, probably not, but many years ago, when I was building official for St. Louis Park, they brought a government agency efficiency expert. They looked at personnel and all the facilities. They owned buildings. So I don't know if we've thought about that or have companies come in and present something to us. They are out there someplace. I don't know where, but I don't know the cost or if it's in-state or I don't know, but it worked pretty well in that city in the 80s.
There was something done, I know, at the high school, I think when we were doing the 7-period day discussion, I think there was something done about percentage of room usage and then percentage of room usage throughout the day. So how many rooms are we using and how often are those rooms being used? Who did that? I don't know. I can check with Kane to see. I'm guessing he's the one that brought them in.
Yeah, I can tell you who did that. It's
Okay.
when we did the big bond, and was it Vold?
Wold. Okay.
And they went through every single building and talked about number of students and the square footage and what was being used and what wasn't being used. That's who did that big one. And they did all of the buildings.
Okay.
Wold.
But if I may, is that the building, but also this other firm looked at buildings and also personnel. I don't know if that, for efficiencies, combining departments, or you need more people, or you don't, I don't know how that would work with the school district, but, like the city has not as many employees as the school district, of course. But I don't know if that's worth bringing in a firm to talk to us about that.
So, Mr. Olson, I don't want to speak for you, but maybe that's something Mr. Benty can investigate.
Sure, yeah.
Just in terms of general concept, are you in favor and supportive of our district reexamining some of these things?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
But, I believe in bringing in experts.
Yep.
And Jamie's, he's got a lot on his table already. So, sometimes you have to bring in experts.
Other thoughts, people, in terms of this concept and investigative work? Are people supportive of it? Ms. Boudreau?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm just wanted to ask, is there some members of our staff or cabinet that have pursued this for efficiencies? I mean, maybe in categories like pre-K, elementary, looking at it in that perspective, because I think there may be.
No, Cabinet has looked at it, and we have put together numbers around financial efficiencies. We never got into looking at what's best for kids and what's best for learning. So we know, for the most part, I'm pretty confident in the work that Cabinet did. We know financially what we could do. But the piece that we're missing is we haven't researched any of what we can do. How would that affect the learning environment for students, positively or negatively? I think if I came back and I said, we can do all these efficiencies with our buildings, and then here's the research that shows that this is a positive move for learning environments, then that's kind of a no-brainer. If I say it's a neutral or negative, then you have to start weighing the financial versus the educational.
Well, efficiencies usually save money, right? I mean, I support it, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Moore?
Yes, I support it too. I would like to make a comment with all due respect to you, Mr. Wolf. I think the ALC is a good program, and I've been there. Of course, it's my school, but I've been there a number of times, and I've toured the buildings and what resources they have. They really are a model of efficiency, and I have to say that. And so I think it's a good program. I think it's not for every student, but there's certain students that need that program. So
Yeah, and I want to make it specifically clear. I didn't say that it wasn't a good program.
Okay,
That
I misunderstood
That building, I don't believe is
Oh, the building.
the best
All right.
building for our
I was
students
thinking
in
the
that
ALC.
program.
Thank you for the
Yeah.
clarification.
There's no gym, there's no lunchroom.
Right, no kitchen.
So that's all I want to say is
Okay,
I fully
thank you.
support that
Thank you.
program.
Okay.
Mr. Bellingham, would you support something like this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm so excited to see this come up as a discussion item, to be honest with you. If this was presented, I think, 2 or 3 years ago as a budget reduction piece, and what we were missing at that point, I do believe, was how many pieces of the puzzle it takes to fit this together. Because, number one, our constituents, what are our parents thinking of having grade banding? The concept of neighborhood schools, which I believe is long gone, so grade banding with a few K1 or P1 in one building, 2, 3, 4, 5, does that give you more efficiency, whatever? So I think surveys need to go out to parents. We need to survey our students. I think we could attract more students interest-wise. To have all our fifth graders together in one building, I believe you would be able to do much more curriculum work, et cetera. But I want to know what the research says. I already have kind of an idea. I've read some of it already as to how does that positively promote learning and student achievement. There's a lot of pieces to go into this, not just financial, which was presented 3 years ago, but the communication piece with staff, because there's a lot of juggling among staff then. Seniority, there's different licensure issues all through the whole gamut here. So I'm very excited to see, or happy to see, and would promote this very much, of having discussion, having staff start to continue their research as to what's best for our kids and how we promote this. Because bottom line, if you were to change something like this will change how education is delivered in Faribault. Big time, permanently. So.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Ms. Steves, would you be supportive? Yeah. Yes? Okay. Any other comments?
I like what everyone said so far.
Okay. Mr. Robichaud?
I would support it, and like Mr. Billingham said, we've discussed this for 3 years. It's time to really come up to a concrete decision on what we're going to do. I would also like to add that we take a look at year-round school as well, which is going to have some significant facility issues that we need to address. But I think that's something we need to take a look at in addition to the reorganization.
Okay. Mr. Benty, do you feel I certainly heard consensus. In fact, I think it was pretty unanimous that people encourage this. And I think I also heard a lot of support in efficiencies and also a lot of support in student-centered achievement, or however you want to say it. So as you mentioned before, there's a blending of that. And as mentioned, there's a lot of stakeholders because change is difficult at times, whatever that may be, small or big, who knows? So we look forward to being informed and educated and whatever that looks like going forward over the next year or so. Because in a perfect world, I know it's not perfect, but in a perfect world, would the hope, depending on how sizable these things are, would be for the 24-25 year to put some of this stuff potentially in place.
In a perfect world, we would bring something to you in the fall, late-ish fall, that you would say yes to, or whatever. If you approved, we would then be able to pull off for the following school year. If it's something that the board waited until March, it really becomes very, very difficult to pull off for that same school year. So.
Because if there are changes, there's a tremendous amount of communication to all the stakeholders, the parents, the students, as Mr. Bellingham said.
We're changing
staff.
bus routes,
Yep.
there's a massive amount of changes that have to happen, yes.
And I think whoever's watching, staff members or family members, there are no changes tomorrow. There are nothing set in stone. So don't hit the panic button. We don't all need emails that, oh my gosh, don't change this or this or this. This is just giving you a direction that we would entertain and enjoy the feedback and what it looks like. Okay, thank you. You have enough? You're good with that? Brings us to other items, number 12, other items, 12A, school board members. The floor is yours. Anything you'd like to report on or talk about, the floor is yours. Ms. Moore.
I'll start, sure. I have a couple things here. There was I am on the Faribault Ice Arena Association, and they met on April 12th, and I was not able to go to that because I was sick. But the chairman, Paul Froman, did talk to me. I contacted him, and he got a hold of me. And I guess one of the big things is the ice chillers are going to have some repair and replacement. And I think maybe Mr. Kane will talk to us about that at some point, so I won't drag it out. But and then also, you had mentioned that I could mention this at with the student discipline. I know we have student handbooks, but I know there's still behavioral problems. And so I guess, should we have I'm just throwing this out, and we don't have to discuss it now, but should we have a district-wide policy that is more strict? I think students need to be held accountable, and that's a good thing for them. So I'm just concerned because I know when we knocked on the doors this summer, that was a big concern. Both students talked to me about that, and parents, and even some district staff when we knocked on the doors. So we've got this is a huge problem, I think, the behavioral issues, and somehow we need to address it. So anyway.
Thank you for that.
And then I just want to mention too, because thank you for your clarification with the ALC. But I noticed it was in March, Cora, I think, and Mallory were supposed to present, and I thought they would be presenting this at this meeting, but I'm hoping they'll be able to present at the next meeting. I don't know if that's possible, because I think they had a presentation ready, from what I understood.
Yeah, I'll have to check with Kathy.
Okay.
I think they canceled their.
Oh, in March?
In March,
Okay.
yes.
And I thought it was supposed to be moved,
Or we
and I didn't
postponed
notice
it,
it.
so I'll check with Kathy.
Thank you. And
Ms.
that's basically it.
And Ms. Moore, on the other comments, I would just encourage you to work with Superintendent Benty
okay.
on that, and
Okay, very good.
Mr. Benty can help navigate that.
Okay, thank you.
But other questions or comments? I'm sorry, just other comments. The floor is yours. No questions. I don't know. We have answers. So, Mr.
Just a
Wiltshire.
comment, Mr. Chair. For any board member that's available, May 15th is a Wednesday. We will be awarding a school board scholarship that evening to a student. So if you're able to be there, we'd like to recognize the board for their contributions to this scholarship. So it'll be a $1,500 scholarship we'll be awarding. It's at, there's a small reception at 5 o'clock, probably in the cafeteria, and then the award ceremony, I believe, starts at 6 o'clock. You should have gotten an invitation, if not already, but it's the second year we've done this as a board, and thank you for your dedication as students.
And Mr. Bellingham, you're presenting that?
That's correct.
And if you have not been to that awards banquet, I would strongly, if you can go. It's going to take about 3 hours, and they're moving, but they will give out, I say they, collectively, FAPSETA and all the donors and stuff will give out a little over probably 6 figures. And if you don't think Faribault Public Schools is putting out some unbelievable product, your eyes will be opened. I would strongly encourage you to go and see and hear some of the stories of these people and what they're pursuing. It's quite amazing. So, anything else you'd like to add on that? Other board members?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of things. So, in our, we recognize retirements, et cetera, but in our consent agenda tonight, we had some resignations of people who've chosen to go elsewhere or move on with their life. And I just want to do a shout out to one of them. It's a 5th grade teacher at Jefferson, Amy Stolo, who was 15 years with the district, just an outstanding teacher and leader. and I just want to thank her for her years in the district and things like that. Then last Friday, I was invited to the high school to participate in I had to put my teacher hat back on, and I was invited to work with 4 students who are in the FFA in a agricultural sales practice, which they were preparing for the state FFA competition, which started Sunday and I believe Monday and tomorrow. They finish up, and it was an eye-opener. As Mr. Wolf says, we have some really outstanding kids who really do a great job and present themselves well. I'll just go into it a little bit. It was a presentation on 3 different scenarios on working in a store selling cat food. Okay, and so to sell even scratching posts and waters and all this. And I tried playing tough because I was in retail for a while and things too, but I didn't come home with 50 pounds of cat food. It was 100. No, I'm kidding. But what a great opportunity, how enriching it was to see what our programs are doing at the high school. And they were talking top 5 at the state level and at Williams Arena in Minneapolis, so I'm anxious to hear the report, but I want to thank Madeline Schultz for inviting me in and having the opportunity again to work with those kids. It was really enjoyable, and once again, to be a part of this district and the things we're doing is just great, so thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I attended the alumni recognition for graduates of Faribault High School. It was my first time Saturday night, and that was a very rewarding event for me, just to see all ages of people from, I think, in their 40s to maybe 80s. And they selected, I think it was, forgot now if it was 6 or 7, but just enjoyable to see how people from our community have really made their way in the world and are renowned. One was a physician who is a cardiologist, and he said after he retired, he came to Faribault to do maybe he came just once a month or something, I'm not sure, but Dr. Lips, he said people called him Danny. Oh, hi, Danny, and I want Danny to do my surgery, and he said the only name my colleagues knew me as was Doctor. But he said that was a little levity, so then his colleagues, it was kind of funny. I guess you had to be there. But enjoyable, very enjoyable. Glad I went.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau.
Yeah.
Just an FYI, all of the inductees that are in the distinguished alumni, all of their stories are on the wall at the high school. The Booster
Across
Club
from the
pays for them every
counselors.
year. And so if you
Yeah.
ever want to stop in and read them, they're great. And
Counseling.
I was not at this one. I wasn't able to make it. But I think I've been at 2 in the past. And I can't speak to the individuals but of this one on Saturday night. But what really hit home for me, and it should hopefully for all of us and all the people employed in the school district, are the impact that educators and or coaches had on all those people.
Mhm.
And it was just truly, truly amazing. And I don't know if that continued to be the case or what the message was on
That
Saturday
was
night, but
emphasized, yes.
it's an
Multiple
interesting thing.
times.
So, yeah. So, wonderful.
But it
Thank
was
you.
good.
Any other comments, board members? I'll just add last Tuesday, I believe Legacy Real Estate, Legacy House hosted Mr. Benty for a community presentation. They served some lunch, and I was able to attend. Mr. Bellingham attended as well. There was, 15, 20 people there. Ms. Reisted was there. I thought you did a wonderful job. I thought there were great questions. I think there were some shock and awe moments of people like, what, we really have to do this and we really have to do that? And it's like, yes, we really have to. And so anyway, I just want to tell you, I thought you did a great job with that, and hopefully it was well received amongst the people that were there as well. So anything else, anyone? Okay, that concludes item 12A. 12B, Mr. Benty, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of piggyback off of what Mr. Bellingham said. I mean, right now we have students in DECA Nationals. We have students that performed in Houston, Texas at robotics. World competition. We have students that are performing in FFA state competition. So there's great things going on here in Faribault, and that's just to name a few. As of last week, we already have a wait list for the dual immersion program that we just announced. So we have 28 students that have signed up for it already. So we already have a wait list. I'm going to be meeting with, I know Dr. Robichaud, you seem shocked by that, right?
I'm shocked.
So I'll be meeting with Katie Schultz here in the next few days to set up some of the parameters around that. One of the pieces that I do have is that I've met with 5 of you so far, but I'm missing 2. We had, back in March, we had some pieces that the board voted on around FOA, our Faribault Online Academy. And there was cost-saving measures to be able to basically reduce that program and open up a consortium with Owatonna would house it, and Northfield would come into it as well. There have been some changes in not only our numbers, but some of the understandings around the pieces of it. And really what I'm going to be bringing back at the May 8th board meeting is that we reinstitute Faribault Online Academy. What I'm asking is that if you have not met with me yet, to meet with me so I can kind of walk through the financial piece of that so that you understand why 2 months ago I was saying we need to reduce this program and why now I'm saying that we need to bring it back. And then what I'm looking for is May 8th. I know it's a work session, but if we could also have some type of business session that this could be voted on, simply because then it allows us, there's a lot of positions that we need to post and get hired for this. Or we need to know, I need to know what to do then as quickly as possible.
So, Mr. Benty, what we would do, or what we've historically done, is we would create a special board meeting. We'd post it. That would start at 5:30. There'd be the one item on there.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, what you're referring to, FOA, you'd give us information. We'd vote. Prior to that, obviously, you can have any discussions you want with board members, make sure that they're informed. And then following that special board meeting, then we would preclude into our work session, if that's what you're thinking.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Other than that, that is all that I have.
Okay. Thank you for that. So, Ms. Yoakum or Mr. Benty, hearing the request that we create a special board meeting, can you communicate with Ms. Zavrel to make sure that we post that?
Yes.
That needs to be posted for May 8th. So dates to remember, information only here, May 2nd, 2023 at 3:30 p.m. is a policy meeting. That's virtual. What's that?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to just slide in here. The new special board meeting that we just mentioned will be at 5:30. They'll have the one topic on there. It'll be Falcon Online Academy. Immediately following that, we will then have the May 8th work session. May 15th, 2023, 7:30 a.m. is the finance meeting virtual. And then May 22nd, 2023, 5:30 p.m. will be our regular business board meeting. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending in person and online.